Hi, or should I do my clicker noise? The
Yeah,
Yes.
that was terrible.
it was pretty bad.
That was worse than normal.
Worse than normal. Well,
Yeah,
Sarah doesn't like it when I do it. Anyways, welcome back to the What Did You Think podcast, episode
21.
21.
Yes.
Um, Today's a very special day, as you may know, or maybe not, just by reading the title. We have a very special guest with us, all the way from the far land of That Shady Buffalo podcast. It is Mr. David. How are you
Yes,
doing today?
sir. I'm great, guys. It's good to be here. I'm happy to be joining you and talking about The Last of Us.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's
sir.
been begging us to put him on an episode, and
Every episode, I'm like, I could have talked about this one. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah.
I definitely have seen Cocaine Bear. Come on, guys.
Yeah. So we saw The Last of Us, and
Yes.
it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So what was important for us was that not only did we get each other's opinions, because obviously what we thought and all that stuff, we wanted to get the viewpoint of someone who hadn't played the games, because me and Ben are very influenced by how the adaptation process is. But we also wanted to know how this show is in the perspective of someone who doesn't have that context. And so I think we can just jump right into it. And for the first part of it, keeping it kind of spoiler free, as someone who hadn't played the game, what did you think about The Last of Us on HBO?
Hey, he said the thing.
He said
Uh,
the
Said the line.
I adored the show. And I did, coming into the show, have some general ideas based off the game. I'd watched some reviews of the first game and the second game, so I had some idea of not only just this first season, but also where it was going in the future. Like, I'm assuming are we avoiding spoilers even for this first season, or are we gonna?
Just for now, we're gonna get into
Yeah,
spoilers in a
that's
little
fine.
bit.
That's fine. I just
Yeah.
didn't want to go ahead and jump the gun on that.
You're
So,
good.
yeah, so like I knew some things coming into it that maybe other people wouldn't have known. However, I my biggest takeaway was that it felt like kind of a breath of fresh air, which is funny because it's not even a new story. The game is it's from the games, right? So
Right.
not even a brand new story, but it just felt so unique. I'm gonna just use the term zombie for the genre. Obviously, I
Mhm.
know they're infected. They're not zombies. Don't everyone yell at me
They're
at once.
zombie. They're zombies.
I don't know what like
I
zombie
don't
show
mind.
doesn't like actually calls them
I
zombies
know.
though.
That's true too. They're never like, oh, the zombies are coming to get us. So, that's fair. But I've seen some like backlash whenever podcasters or people on YouTube call them zombies. They're like, they're not zombies. I'm like,
Get over it.
whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're the infected, but in the genre, the subgenre of horror that is a zombie genre, like they typically just do things in kind of the same way. The Walking Dead kind of came on the scene and kind of broke some of those conventions, but also stuck true to a lot of them. And I just think this show broke the mold in the game too, obviously, but we're focusing on the show, breaks the mold in a really unique way that I loved. Some people may come to this show and may be looking for more action or more like the creature effects and more the shocking deaths and all these things
Right.
that zombie shows usually bring. And this show does have that somewhat, but there are several episodes where you don't get a lot of that stuff, and
Mhm.
I loved that. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
you want to make a show with the plot and the characters in the forefront, and then you apply the genre stuff after that. And I think shows like The Walking Dead, although I did love it in its time, and have since fallen off that, but
Mhm.
a lot of those shows put the genre before the story instead of putting the story before the genre.
Right.
And I love that this show put story and character in the front seat.
I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you there. And I saw something kind of interesting. This isn't really spoiler, but there's not a zombie. There's only like I heard there was only or read there was only 2 zombies in the final 4 episodes of the show, or final 3 episodes, I believe.
I think
Which
that might be accurate because there's
Yeah.
it's
well, I
4 or
want to
3.
say what episodes are
No,
what,
no,
but
you're good. But it's like it definitely takes that slow approach, and I feel like that could be a turnoff for some people too, especially
yeah,
when like there's not a zombie show like this or a movie like this. There's like World War Z where it's constantly
it's like
action,
thousands
and
and thousands.
Right.
yeah, Right. And in the video game, it honestly is kind of constant action for the most part with breaks of long cutscenes. But with this, it takes its time. And I think it if you don't know what it is going into it, like I feel like if you know you are that like constant, I need that action for if that's what you want, this you probably won't like it because this does focus on the characters more than anything else.
It's interesting that you guys bring up the noticeable lack of action for the genre. There was actually the game came out in 2013. They announced a film adaptation in 2014, and that actually fell through because
wow.
Neil Druckmann, the director of the game, there was so many creative differences because the studio that wanted to make the movie wanted to make it an action movie. And Neil Druckmann, obviously having written the game, he knew that that's not the direction the story needs. And having seen the show now and it's more dramatic over action take, I agree. You know, the initial response when at adapting a video game is like, well, in the video game you're shooting people all the time, why wouldn't we do that in the show? It's because they're different mediums and they have different strengths, and you need to play to those strengths if you want it to be a quality story.
And I wouldn't say like someone that's an action fan wouldn't enjoy these, but if you're like favorite movies Fast and the Furious, then maybe you wouldn't like this.
Or maybe you should branch out a little bit. Maybe you
Maybe.
Branch out.
Yeah. I mean, I was very heavily dedicated to the Marvel movies for so long. It's not up until recently that I've really strayed from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, give this a shot, whether or not you think you'll like it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and it is 9 episodes. It's not like we're asking you to watch like 11 seasons of The Walking Dead
right.
where it can become repetitive.
Yeah,
and
my brother's asking me to do that, which
well, and these
I'm gonna,
episodes,
but
well, maybe,
I mean, so like I don't want to get any Walking Dead fans against me. I watched up until the season that Negan comes in, and I watched about 3/4 of that season, and I fell off. Now, part of why I fell off is that I actually like behind me. You can't maybe see them, but I have like all like 50, 60 episodes issues of the Walking Dead graphic novel. So I'm not just like some guy that watched The Walking Dead. Like I read the graphic novels. I read well past Negan into like the Whisperers storylines that are even way past that they have recently been doing. And I just like felt like the show became too repetitive and was going for the shock factor all the time, trying to surprise you all the time. And the characters in the story didn't always work with that. So that's why I bring up that point of like not trying to just like crap all over The Walking Dead. If you love that show, good for you. I just think this is a little bit of a fresh take on that similar genre.
And we won't stay in The Walking Dead for too long.
That's fair.
But
I mean, it's a pretty obvious comparison to make. So
it's hard not to make it because that show is so popular.
I will say though, I find that the video game version, like the Telltale series of The Walking Dead,
that's really good.
4 games is a lot better than The Walking Dead itself because
overall,
it ends strong. And I mean, I can only think of like I don't know when the last time you guys played it, but or if you've played it.
I haven't played it actually,
dude. Well,
I played
our
the first 2 seasons. I think it's pretty good.
I played all of them back to back, and I can think that the third one itself, is the worst of the series because it tries something different and it doesn't stick with what worked. And in the fourth they went back to it, but they still knew when to end it. Where I feel like with The Walking Dead doesn't or didn't know how to end it and took 11 seasons, which you know, to get into talks of like money versus like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a weird thing. I watched a video essay about like ending a show for artistic reasons versus financial reasons. I can understand as an audience member, like, oh, it's obviously right here's when you end it. But when you're in charge of all these people's livelihoods and you're at the top of the popular culture zeitgeist, like it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to end it. But
and that was the way TV was made for decades.
Yeah.
Well, you've got soap operas going on for like 30 years,
a billion years,
you know? Jeopardy. But,
right.
No,
what a soap opera.
No, it's Jeopardy's my favorite soap opera.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, it's
I don't know if I want to dwell in the spoiler-free section for too long because
it's kind of hard.
There's a lot to talk about.
Stuff.
So I think this is the cutoff. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? If you don't care, reevaluate that, maybe watch it just anyway. But
It's super good. Go watch it.
It's super
Right.
good.
Well,
But
buckle up and get
yeah.
ready for the next 4 hours because we are going to be full spoilers. We're going
Yeah.
in depth every episode.
Let's go.
I'm on spring break right now. I don't have anything else to do.
That's the only
I've got
thing where
work
it is.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll cross that bridge when
We'll
we get
see.
to it. Yeah.
I might have to call in sick.
Okay. So whoever wants to go first can take it away.
Sure. Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Me?
Okay. So
I'm
gonna go,
yeah.
I guess. So for spoilers, I think talking about, we kind of tiptoed around it. You mentioned the zombie thing in terms of how many there are in some episodes.
Mhm.
The fact that you could have several episodes where there basically are not any, and me still be totally glued to the screen, like episode 8. I thought that was like, that's all I need to know is like this show, the acting is incredible. And the fact that you can just dwell on pretty much just two people for, and there probably isn't any episode. I'm assuming there's not any episode where like even most of the episode is just the two of them. But there's still several long scenes where you just have the two of them talking. And I mean, I sent a text to some of my buddies. I was watching the finale on Monday, and I was about 20 minutes in, and I was like, I still have half episode to go, and I'm crying right now on my couch by myself because Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are just like knocking it out of the park emotionally. I'm jumping to the finale, but I don't want to do that necessarily. But that's just kind of the way this show is gone. Is like they bring everything to the table, which is part of the strength of horror because you can bring in some different factors of emotion that not every genre can always tap into. So the emotional moments are a little bit more real because there's a threat of losing any character anytime. But you also can still bring in comedy, and you can still bring in other moments, other aspects of emotion beyond just like being sad or being scared. So I thought the way that this show, like every episode kind of gives you a little bit of everything, even the premiere. I mean, I was laughing in the first half an hour until the world goes to crap.
Until everything ends.
And then I was like, oh, this isn't funny anymore. When Grandma was twitching in the corner, I was like, this is not funny.
Yeah, that was a great shot too.
Yeah.
I will say though, going off of like the emotion that you feel in watching this with Joel and Ellie, that was the most skeptical I was going into the show because with the video game, we have 12 hours to spend with these characters and we're with them all the time. So
or more if you just are slow.
Yeah.
I was terrible. But you have so much time. So not only like with a video game, I typically have a tendency to already attach myself with the main character that I'm playing as because I'm with it's with my ups and downs as like playing with them. I'm like constantly failing. So to see if they were going to be able to capture their relationship and the emotional beats within the story of the game was interesting to me because you don't understand or you probably do understand of how many levels of the game that they just like don't use because they can't because it's just gameplay. And I will say though, like watching it, I think after probably the second episode, or even the first, but second with Joel and Ellie because the first ends with Joel and Ellie just meeting. But with the second episode, all my fears of that were completely gone because it has to do with the acting. First of all, they both are incredible and they just mesh so well on screen together. But also, I think it is a testament to how comfortable Craig Mazin is, one of the like backs behind the show, how comfortable he is of letting Neil Druckmann basically just like take care of it and like I trust you, I love what you made, let me help you make this, know. And I think we get too much of like these video game adaptations lose the video game part and it just be an adaptation of something, but
it's just a brand to sell something. Yeah,
exactly. You just kind of lose the meat of it all. But I don't know. Cameron, what were you want to say?
I think at least internally within myself, the way I want to structure talking about this is kind of just the emotional roller coaster watching this is because when it's announced, I'm the most protective of this IP, that there is. Like I'm like they should do this. That you can't do this. You already messed it up. You deciding to greenlight this project is deciding that you want to end your career. But I start to lighten things up. And I'm like maybe it's gonna be good. Then I hear they're bringing Neil Druckmann back. That's good. And then I'm skeptical about who they're casting. Not that I have any problems with Pedro Pascal or Bella Ramsey. It's just it's these characters mean so much to me because this game has been such like it's been my favorite video game for ever since I played it. You know, I played it back when I still had to ask my mom before I could buy an M-rated game. Like, so you know, it's been such an important part of my life for so long that I'm obviously very protective of it. But as each episode goes on, I'm just more and more comfortable and willing to not let them, but you know, willing to accept what they're bringing to the table and take it for all the changes and all the similarities. I think for the most part it does a great job. Um and I think episode 1 is a almost a perfect pilot, really. I can't really think of a better way to introduce this story because as been said, the medium of video games connects you to the characters differently than movies do. When you're a video game, when you're playing as a character, you already feel a sense of attachment that you don't with a movie. A movie has to convince you to care about somebody. A video game, you care about them because in a way you are them. And so that's why in the video game you play as Sarah first, so you have that immediate connection to her. So I was wondering how they were going to take that aspect and fill it out in a TV show. And by dedicating more of the time to Sarah, I'm pretty sure you see Sarah more in the show than you do in the game.
Oh yeah.
And I think that was a wonderful decision. And you know, just I don't want to take too much time at
Oh, you're
once.
good.
So yeah.
No, yeah, I loved the premiere. I loved that basically it was like, here's half of an episode that's just this is the Sarah show, and then you're like, nope, no, not anymore because she's gonna die,
Not
and now
anymore.
this is the Joel show. And that jarring switch I think works because they want you to be as shocked as Joel is, right? Because that is the best way to make that be effective is have her be the main character of that first half of the episode, and it's about 45. It's like a long time, and to see the world go to crap through her eyes, the eyes of a teenager in high school. I mean, it is traumatic, and it is like when the plane comes crashing into the city, I was just like jaw on the floor, like I almost fell out of my chair. You know, like just madness is happening, and you experience it the way that she does. The POV shot, or not really POV shot, but like where the camera follows her in the truck as the plane's coming down, and this is all going to crazy. That is an incredible shot because not just is it an interesting, cool, creative from a behind the scenes view, but like as a audience member watching something, it helps you follow the protagonist, which at that
Right.
point is still Sarah. So then it's like such a great choice to just be like, no, we're gonna be with her, and that's it. And then when she's gone and she's just taken from you, it's so much more jarring. So I love that choice too.
And the fact that like it's shot for shot in the game
Yeah,
too
that part
is
is yeah.
what's nuts to me.
Hmm.
And the show is so comfortable with doing that because we'll see multiple times it's not even just like set pieces that are the same, but even like simple fact of lines of dialogue are just
Hmm.
copy and paste. And even these shots of like the 5 minute sequence of them in the truck, they added the plane crash scene in
Yeah.
the show. And
Yeah.
I think it's better that way too. I think it's like, oh, this is nuts. But
Well,
Yeah.
also,
because that demonstrates that they're willing to keep this interesting, not just for people who haven't played the game, but for people who have, because they do a fake out. In the game, they don't get hit by the plane wreckage; they get hit by a car. And
Yeah.
there's a scene where you're like, "Oh, they're gonna get hit by a car here," and that doesn't happen. And so those little elements of surprise and little elements of creative liberty make it interesting for anybody watching it, I think.
Yeah.
and when watching it, so I have a question. Maybe you can't remember, but when it was the plane wreckage, did you guys realize it was the whole tire of the plane bouncing off the wall? Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
It's madness.
I thought it was like a phone from a pilot, like because the way it's shot, you can look at it. It looks like something flies through the back of the windshield and like hits Sarah in the head, and then the plane crash. I'm like, that doesn't make much sense. But also, that could just be like my eyes reading everything at like 30,000 frames per second, so I just can't tell what's happening. But no, I was like, that's odd. But no, I think I'm not trying to spend too much time on the pilot. I really am not. But also I think like there's so much that we can just dissect on like everything it does right. You know, because
Yeah.
I don't find any issue with the first few episodes at all. I
Yeah.
mean,
I don't really
because
have a problem with it until like episode 7,
Do you have a
honestly.
problem with the kiss?
which kiss?
Episode 2 at the end when the infected kisses Tess.
Oh, that was odd. That
I
was
don't
like
have a. Well, okay.
the
There's
way
actually
she goes out in the game is different.
there's a
Yeah,
logistical
she is
reason they
killed
had
by
to do that.
fireflies. I mean, by she gets shot
Fedra, yeah.
by Fedra, right? Yeah, in the game.
There's a logistical reason that they had to change that. And it's because in the video game, the infection spreads through spores, and
Yes.
scientifically, you wouldn't be able to leave anywhere. You wouldn't be able to exist outside if it was transmitted through spores.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just transmitted through love in True Love's first year.
I will say, crazy enough, I thought that was like the worst part of the show for like it might still be all the way to the end. But I will say, in like full context of the show, I think thematically, the main thematic topic of the show this season at least is love, and like basically like what are you willing to do? Like how far
Right.
will you go to save the people you love, to protect the people you love,
Mm,
to be with the people you love? Like those kind of questions. Episode 3 is about that. Episode 7 is about that. Episode 9 is for sure about that.
yeah.
So you get that, and you get that with Henry and Sam. You get that with several different pairings.
Yeah.
You get that with Tess and Joel for a hot second. You have obviously Ellie and Joel, and then Bill and Frank. I almost forgot their names. Bill and Frank, and then Ellie and I don't remember her friend's name.
Riley.
Riley. I almost said Hayden. Riley.
Well, and
Um,
Tess and the infected.
you
So
get Tess and the infected. So like it is to me. I think it is a little too too cheesy. It's a little too on the nose. But if they're trying to show us that like, hey, this is like a hint at what the theme is, I
yeah.
understand the motivation behind it, and I'm not going to let one little moment ruin
Right.
an incredible first couple episodes. So, but it did stand out. I was
Right.
like, what is happening right now?
I'd be lying if I said I knew what that was for. I mean, when I
I
was
didn't get that in
watching
the
it,
moment. I just thinking back on it now, I'm like, oh,
right.
maybe that's why that was there.
I thought it was just like make you uncomfortable.
Well,
Honestly, I
it did
just thought
that. It did that.
because well, because kind of going off on what Cameron said about the whole cordyceps and everything,
Yeah.
I do find it interesting that the first 2 episodes start off with scientists in different locations. I thought
love
for every
that.
episode we were going to get more of that, and I kind of did. I wanted more of that. I didn't. I
Yeah.
did not like it. I just felt like it was odd that they stopped doing it after 2 episodes.
Yeah,
I
well, we
wanted.
got
I was
it with
curious.
9, right? We got it with 9. Just it was Ellie's backstory flashback,
Right.
and
right.
then in like either 7 or 8, like 8. No, I'm sorry, 7 kind of felt like they were doing that, except for the flashback was actually the present day, and then the full episode was the flashback.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like kind of an inverted flashback. In terms of the placement. So they did it a few different times, but it would have been cool to see like literally if even
How
just a
the
5
rest of
minute
the world.
scene, a flashback of before or right as it's all going to crap. And then
Mhm.
you come back to our main Ellie and Joel story. That would have been neat because it was really cool in the first couple episodes. The actress that plays the woman, the scientist that they pull out of the restaurant in episode 2, is it? Where they
Yeah.
ask her about it, and she's like, "Can I just go home to my family because we're all gonna die?" Basically, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like it
Yeah.
was very heavy, and it like she acted it perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was rough.
The one misstep that happened in the early episodes, which doesn't actually have anything to do about the show itself, but one thing that I think was a missed opportunity, was the actress that played Tess in the video game actually died while the show was releasing. And I think that they should
Oh.
have had like an in memoriam at the end,
Wow.
like just like a in memory of this person, and they never
Yeah.
did. And
That's
that was really
interesting.
weird.
Hmm.
But
That's a
other than
strange.
that, yeah,
That's a strange choice given how many of the people from the video game were actually in the show,
right.
right? Because Ellie's mom is played by the person that played Ellie,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then the person that played Joel was in episode 8, right?
Yeah, he
He
was
played
James.
James. And then the person that played Marlene is the same person, correct?
Yes.
And Tommy
then
was
Tommy
And then
was in episode like 5, 4, and 5.
Tommy was the dude that was like the assistant
The right-hand
of,
man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
To
a big
oh,
player of
whatever
the
her name is.
second game actually is in the last episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which
Cool.
Laura Bailey is one of the nurses.
what?
Yeah.
He just blew Ben's mind.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
But they were wearing masks and everything, so I
Yeah.
couldn't really tell. But I'm shocked you caught that.
Oh, I don't want to get into too specific. I was looking out for Laura Bailey in that episode
Okay.
because of her connection to the second game.
So yeah, episode 3. I would say this is the episode with probably so far in the point of the show with the biggest
departure from the source material.
Yeah, departure.
yeah, good words.
Mhm.
But no, and I think for the best. I think this is a really good episode. It's a break from the suspenseful Joel and Ellie storyline that we're getting. It follows the heartbreak of uh Tess dying, and we have this nice story between Nick Offerman playing Bill and
Some other guy playing Frank.
some other guy playing.
It's Murray Bartlett
Thank
from
you.
the White
Yeah.
Lotus.
Yeah. I haven't seen that, but I hear
I
it's
haven't
good.
either, but I know
It
about it
wins all the
because
awards.
because a Survivor player
Mike White, yeah.
makes it.
Also, apparently he has Survivor players on the show sometimes too.
Yeah,
Just super funny.
both seasons he's had at least one Survivor
That's
player
cool.
on the show, which that's neat. If you're
Yeah.
if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's David's field. He's much better at that. Anyways, so it gives us, a little break, happy story, and then it ends with heartbreak.
Yeah. Oh,
Another, like, this show is a series of gut punches,
Yeah.
and it doesn't stop. It
Yeah.
really doesn't. It's like it gets you down on the first episode, and then it just keeps on kicking you.
Yeah, it's like if you hired somebody to physically assault you every week, but then you're really excited to go back.
yeah. They like complimented you when they finished, so you were like, "Oh, that was nice. I'll see you next week, man." Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's
Can't believe we're gonna have to wait for season 2.
But it's I was excited because I just finished watching Parks and Rec with Sarah while like this episode is about to come out, and I know, like, my parents were really excited because they were huge Parks and Rec fans. So getting to see Nick Offerman in a very different role
Yeah.
from how he is in Parks and Rec is a lot of fun. And I think it's probably one of my favorites to see these, like, actors break out. Like when the comedic actors like Bill Hader and Barry does this, it's a joy to see. And I think the writing in this episode is like the best in the series so far of that we've gotten
So
of, like,
far,
these,
definitely,
of the
yes.
episodes. And I mean, what did you guys think about it?
You can go first.
Mainly,
I mean,
mainly David, because
Yeah.
I want to talk about the
as a
game.
non-game fan, I was like, "Is this all in the game?" I was like, "How did they do like this long of an episode where there's not much action?" I enjoyed the episode, and I mean, well, it's a pretty crazy ride, from the beginning of having him, like, the character he is in the beginning of the episode, Nick Offerman. I mean, is like, yeah, that's what you would expect from Nick Offerman, like survivalist, hates
Mhm.
everybody, has like a safe room has a safe room in his safe room, like, like extra prepared.
Right.
That's what you expect, and then it changes, obviously, and that's a cool, like, character arc to get. I couldn't help by the end. I enjoyed it, but I couldn't help by the end being like, will I look back on this moment in 5 episodes and I feel like we wasted a little too much time here? And I'm glad to say that I don't feel that way. But to have, as we'll see later on, there's 2 episodes where you don't really get Joel and Ellie, right? And even the first
Right.
episode, it kind of counts as well a little bit. So you kind of, in a 6 and a 9 episode show, you can kind of argue that 3 of them aren't really about Joel and Ellie.
Right.
And I think over the course of the season, that doesn't matter, and it works just fine. But
Mhm.
in the moment, I was always kind of like, am I gonna wish we had spent more time with Joel and
Right.
Ellie, down the line? So for now, I'm happy with
I
it.
did have similar thoughts of like,
Yeah.
man, what a good story. But we were listening to another good story just a second ago. Like, what's going on
Yeah.
with them?
So, can you explain what Billstown was to David to really
Yeah,
make him
when I say this is a departure, this is a very like an exact opposite of what happens in the game.
Yeah.
So in the game, when we meet Bill, he is alone in a city similar to how it was at the start of his journey. He starts
Okay.
the same. I imagine the story is very similar up until a certain point. But in the game, he's a very lonely person. He talks to himself. He's kind of crazy, sets up traps everywhere. You can tell he's not used to, nor does he really want to have a lot of human interaction. And his whole point in the story, the same reason everyone else in the story is there, is to kind of expose Joel to an alternative line of thinking in regards to a relationship, and kind of test the waters a little bit, see what develop why Joel thinks the way he does. So in the show, Bill and Frank's story is all about Joel. You need to find somebody to care for because that's what gets you through life. And in the game, Bill has the exact opposite. He tells Joel, just give her a gun and tell her to find her own way. You don't need anyone else's dead weight on you. And I'm surprised that for such a drastic change, it actually works. It essentially does the same thing, just on a
Yeah.
different extreme, and it
Yeah.
works really well.
Well, it's almost
Mhm.
like as if, and not having played the game, I'm not sure, but it's almost like in the game, Bill is so far gone that even though his message is the opposite, the effect it has on Joel is the same because he's so wacky that Joel's like, I can't become him. So, and maybe
Right,
that's not quite right, but
Right.
that's the
right.
feeling I'm getting from your
Eh,
retelling, at least, is that like
mhm.
they just took a different approach to the same thing. And I would assume they wanted to do this because it tells a more like heartwarming story
It's a it yeah.
in a season with very few of those.
Right. In a
Right.
game, you can take Tess's death and you can you can pace it out with gameplay. You like, okay,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
reeling with this through gameplay. In a show, you can't just have them walking through a building and shooting people as a way of catharsis or a way of reflection. So I feel like they did this to give the audience time to deal with Tess's death in a more positive way.
sure.
Um, by the way, we don't see Frank in the game in any other
At
way
all?
he's a corpse.
Oh,
We find
okay.
his hanging body, and that's how we learn about him.
So is
Uh,
there an implied relationship in the game?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
but it's like by the time we meet Bill, they had already parted
Broken
ways.
up. Yeah,
Yeah, they parted ways, and like you don't need anyone else. And then they find his body, and Bill's very obviously shaken, and he's like, "Well, serves him right," you know. But he's
yeah.
like
Just the gruff.
putting on a
Yeah,
front. Yeah,
yeah.
but
Wow.
um man, this episode, apparently I've only read now, I by research I read one article title, not even the article, I read the title. Apparently there's a 2 hour cut of this episode somewhere.
Holy cow.
Why?
I mean,
um
it is an hour 16, so it's
yeah,
only about 45 minutes extra. That's a lot of extra stuff.
yeah, but I mean this was basically its own movie if you think
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This
So,
Yeah.
one in
you
the
know,
premiere.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get like Joel at the very end. Like,
Hmm.
well, we get Joel and Ellie walking through and they
In the
find a note.
beginning and the
And
end.
that's where
Yeah.
Ellie gets the gun, which is different than how
Different
she
than the
gets it in the
game.
game, and we'll address that in a second. But
Okay.
um with we see Joel and Tess eating a meal with Bill and Frank. And I really like that scene too because it also shows more of Joel and Tess's character too, and how
Yeah.
Joel's always been this standoffish. And you know,
And how
we
Bill and Joel start kind of in a similar place.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very fun because Tess is very frank, you know.
Mhm.
Uh and Joel is definitely Bill. I mean, Bill doesn't let go of his gun at the dinner table when they're
Yeah.
all talking. So I do find that I enjoy those similarities. And it's just at the end of the episode, it's
Man.
like, ugh, so sad because you have, you know, in the spoiler section, I have to remind myself that Frank is dying. You know, he's in a
Hmm.
wheelchair. He's going to die. So Bill and Frank, they get married, and Frank says like, crunch up this like Adderall or something. I don't know what it was. Probably not Adderall, but it was
No,
like,
it's probably like painkillers or something. Something
yeah,
like
just
super strong. Yeah.
he's
Like,
like, oh, OD me,
yeah.
and he's like, okay, and then well,
The perfect
and then
impression.
he also
Is he off camera? Is he
Come on
there?
in. Come on
Come on, Nick.
in.
yeah, he is. And Nick Offerman's like, okay, well, I'll do it too. And they go out together, and
Yeah.
I absolutely so within the game, we get a lot of recurring window shots and window
Yeah.
still shots. And I absolutely love the choice to not show us the bodies
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also end it with a window shot looking out to the horizon of Joel and Ellie walking out is like it's those little things that like and maybe it's not like a coincidence at all and Cameron and I are just dumb, but for anyone that plays the video games they're like, "Oh, it's a win. They definitely know
It's
what they're doing."
that's
Yeah.
the main menu of the game. Like when you
It
press
is.
play new
Uh,
game, DLC stuff, it's the main menu. I'm glad they were able to incorporate that into it. there are a lot of Easter eggs and references to the game.
Yeah.
If you can't tell.
Yeah. For
There's some
example, the
things
main
I'm like,
character is named Joel, just like in the game.
it's a wild Easter egg.
Yeah.
There are like moments where I think maybe there's an Easter egg and I don't get it. But
Mhm.
that's kind of things where it doesn't stand out. It isn't like pointing at like, hey, look, we did it. Look, here it
Right.
is. See this thing?
Right.
It's not like a
trying.
flashing like square button above something.
Yeah. And like I mean, you mentioned the choice not to show the bodies. I mean, that happens continuing forward several other
Mhm.
times too, where they cut away or they show the characters reacting to the bodies, which is again showing the character focus, not the shock and awe horror focus. So I think I love that. I love the scene transition. I'm pretty sure they're back-to-back scenes where Nick Offerman he apologizes, right, for getting old, and then the next scene you realize that Frank is dying, and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's brutal because you think, oh maybe this is going towards the path of like Nick Offerman gets old and gets something and he dies, but no, it's like the reversal
Yeah.
of like, I'm so sorry I'm getting old, and he's like, no, actually I'm gonna outlive you because you're dying of cancer or whatever it is. We don't really know, but probably cancer. It's just like it's a brutal twist.
And
Yeah.
when they're getting attacked by raiders or whatever,
Oh yeah,
and
that scene is wild.
Bill goes out there with a shotgun, not afraid of anything, is just shooting
That's
at nothing too, which is
That's the scene
insane.
back to back. It's him saying he's getting old, and then they get attacked by raiders, and he's getting shot. And then the next scene is Frank being sick. So you
Right.
like you think
And
maybe Bill's gonna die there, and he's fine.
uh,
And it's Frank's gonna die.
so I call Cameron right after the episode, and I'm like, I thought for a second they were gonna kill off Bill and have Frank be
Uh,
the Bill in
the
the
bitter
game.
old guy, yeah.
Mhm.
And that was not the case at all. But I was like, oh, okay. But that continues to like prove that even if you've played the game, you don't know what to expect. You have an idea, but you can be surprised. And each episode is pretty much a good surprise for the most part.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've said what I want to say about like episode 3 and all that stuff. What is the 4th episode?
So the 4th episode is by far the most nothing episode, I feel, and that's definitely on purpose. Because 3
It's
and 5 are
basically
my
all set
favorite
up, right?
episodes.
Is this
Yeah,
when they get attacked by?
that's when they're setting up
Oh,
Henry's
Kansas.
situation.
yeah.
3 and 5 are my favorite episodes. There's no way to be in the middle of those and not be, can like look down upon, I guess. So they didn't even. This sounds bad, but like they didn't even try, but in like the good way, where they realize that they have 2 high points, and they have a little connective tissue they needed for those things to be good. So just do that, make it short, make it sweet, and then make way for the actual titans of the series.
Right.
So with that being said, there's not unless you guys can think of something.
I mean,
All
we
the
can
stuff
kind of
to
do them
say,
together if you want, because they're it's
all the stuff you
4
can
and
say
5
about
are all just one big storyline.
episode 4 is doubled down in on episode 5.
Yeah.
So you good?
I'm just so uncomfortable right now. All right, I'm good. I gotta.
You gonna throw up?
No, we're good.
All right.
Okay.
So episode 4 and 5.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would agree. Like the episode 4 stuff, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. A lot of good setup and some good character stuff. When Ellie has to save Joel, and then Joel's like, "You're too young to have to deal with this kind of stuff." Like that's unfortunate. Kind of him trying to be like the line where he's like, "I'm not really good at this kind of thing." Like trying to like help her deal with it, and he's like, "I don't really know how to help you deal with this because I never had to do that with my daughter because she's dead." Uh, so it's like just that awkward father son thing, and he's father daughter thing, I guess. Sorry, he's just trying to like figure it out, right? But that good character stuff, because they've built it in the first few episodes, it kind of starts to come to fruition a little bit. But there's not a whole lot that happens other than introducing us to the Kansas City people, and at the very very end you get Henry and Sam, right? So, but episode 5 was incredible.
Yeah.
Before we touch the episode 5, I think we need to bring up how Ellie gets the gun in the game.
Go ahead, yeah.
Because
got this, Ben.
it's you played a lot more than I have, but so I'll need your help.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
So I need to remember in the game Joel gets ambushed, kind of like they get ambushed all the time.
They get separated. right? Is that what
They
you're
get
talking about?
separated
Yeah.
in like some building, and this guy is drowning Joel in like a puddle or something. And it's
And
like
in
one of those.
previous times, okay, this is all over the place. It's important. Previously in the game, Joel had already told Ellie there's no chance she's getting a gun. She just needs to do what he says and she'll get through this. So when they get separated, he tells her to stand still. He's going to come after her. He's going to come get her, and then they'll continue. Then, as Ben was saying,
Oh, this guy's like drowning Joel, and it's like one of those quick time events where you gotta bash square a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And then like, oh, he died. And he gets shot in the head, and then we see Ellie's like reaction of her shooting this guy, and Joel's like ticked.
Yeah.
We don't know why. We can assume that many reasons. One, she has a gun. Two, she just had to do this. And I think those are like the biggest things. It's like, I can't believe you. So he takes the gun or whatever, and she's shocked. And this kind of messes with her for.
This is the first
like,
time she's ever killed a human that's not been infected. So it's obviously a bad moment for her.
Yeah. And well, go ahead. I said you know more about the game than I
Okay.
do. So.
Well, I mean, there for the next bit of gameplay as they're walking through the rest of this building, you have time to see how Ellie's demeanor around Joel has changed, and there's like a rift between them. Like they're back together, physically because they've met up since being separated, but they're like now emotionally since meeting, they're like the furthest apart that they have been because of this misunderstanding. And later down the line, they get to this scenario where Joel probably couldn't do it without Ellie, and he finally has like this father-daughter moment, one of the best moments in the game, where he teaches her more like specifically how to shoot a gun. And then that's like his way of saying thank you for saving my life, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't remember how they do it in the show. That's different.
Wasn't it a snowman
It
that
just
they were
happens
shooting
like
at?
She just kind of grabs one.
well in the show she has the one that I don't remember what she gets it like she gets it from Bill and Frank's house. It's
Yeah,
the
it was
one
in the
it's the pistol
cupboard,
she
yeah.
sneaks it. But that moment of him like teaching her, because then he learns, oh, you got you got a gun from Bill and Frank or from somewhere. But then he does like when he's talking to her and trying to tell her like it's it's I hate that you had to kill somebody kind of thing. And he does show her how to use the gun and like has that bonding moment. Makes the joke about like, of course, that's why you're holding it wrong because Vedra taught you stupid stuff. So here's how you actually should hold the gun and that kind of thing. And they kind of reconnect over that. There's not really much of time where he feels like he's mad at her though.
And
yeah, I think the difference is
Yeah.
Joel's a lot more receptive to her taking that step.
yeah,
But
but yeah,
episode 5.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I don't want to be the first one to talk about these episodes because I don't want to jump the gun a little bit. So,
well, if you want to go into 5, I loved the choice to make Sam. I didn't realize it until I watched all the post credits kind of stuff. So I realized then, okay, well, Sam was not deaf in the game. I loved that choice for the story. What did you guys think with that being a departure from the game?
Oh, I thought it was absolutely fine. And I typically hate deaf people. For all of our deaf listeners out there, I'm sorry. No,
They're
I
YouTube watchers.
Right. They're watching like the YouTube auto
Subtitles. They get
Yeah.
subtitles.
No, but, I was kidding. But with making Sam deaf, honestly doesn't change a thing. It really doesn't. And I honestly think that it makes it a bit better for Henry and Sam's character because it shows how much more of like the father / big brother that Henry is to Sam, that like Sam really could not make it without Henry. Like he can't even like hear.
Right.
So like he needs Henry, and Henry really loves Sam, and I mean they both love each other, but it shows how like again what Joel and Ellie kind of are. It's like they really do need each other.
Yeah.
And it's a tough episode.
It's a tough episode for sure.
Well, did you know their fate going into it?
I did not, but I know this is the Joel and Ellie game. I know this is the Joel and
Yeah.
Ellie show. So like the whole
Mhm.
time I'm just like, something's gonna happen. Like
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
s-
Maybe not this episode, but something's gonna happen. And they're not gonna last very long together because I know this show is. That's why I knew Tess was gonna. Like, I knew Tess was probably gonna die pretty soon.
mhm,
That wasn't a surprise to me. Now I didn't know exactly when or how or where, so that kind of
right.
stuff is still left open for me, which I kind of like that. But the method in which that they both died, I didn't know that was going to happen, and that was like shocking,
Right.
absolutely
Yeah.
shocking.
So,
And the way they did it was actually really tactful, I thought, and really well done
mhm,
overall. Having Ellie try to save him was just like absolutely heartbreaking.
That's what's different in the
Okay,
game.
cool.
Okay, well, obviously the death thing, but
Yeah.
I feel a bigger difference in the game. Sam doesn't tell anybody. He still has his
Okay.
fears of being infected, fears of what happens after death, and he communicates that. But Ellie and Sam in their conversation at uh like a point where Ellie thinks it's just a conversation, you know.
Yeah.
And I I love that was so heartbreaking seeing Ellie just try whatever she could, putting her blood in
right.
his infection. Like, part of me thinks that Ellie knew that wasn't going to work and was just trying to make Sam feel better. But also, I feel like a little part of her wanted it to work anyway.
Yeah.
And
I think she fully expected it to work because she knows her talent and she knows, or not her talent, but like she
yeah,
knows her gift and she knows like this, there's a reason she's alive and it's to save people. And this affects her because this breaks her heart. Yes, because her friend just died, but also because are you okay?
did it happen again?
Your camera broke again.
It happened. Oh, wait,
No,
it
you're
just,
back.
okay, cool. The last episode, it broke
Yeah,
for the entire
we
half of the episode.
recorded. Oh,
Oh,
it's gone again.
All
Do
right,
you just want us to go and
just keep going. I'll figure this out.
um yeah, high production
Yeah.
here. No, but what was I oh yeah. I think that uh she knows there's a reason she's alive and like she I think she fully believed this like was going to save him because it has to. There's a reason she's not, there has to be a reason. And I think like it's really devastating to her. Yes, because she lost a friend, but also because if this doesn't work, what's to make us think this whole journey is gonna work in the first place?
Right.
And I think after seeing Sam's death, this is what really strives her to get to the end, get
mhm.
to the Fireflies at the hospital at the end of the show. But I do think we should also that whole like besides like the what we talked about of Sam being deaf and Ellie trying to heal her, pretty much that whole scene in the motel is another like beat for beat on what happens in the game. And even like how unfortunately Henry
Yeah.
dies is like so sad. But
Mhm.
I do like what was her name? The lady that is after Sam and Henry.
Kathleen?
Kathleen?
Kathleen? I
Sounds
think
right.
so.
Catherine.
I think it's
Catherine.
Kathleen.
Catherine is
One
one
of
of
them.
them.
Yeah. But I've heard a lot of complaints about her story and
Yeah.
um I could I've played the game, so I could take it or leave it. But as someone who hasn't played the game,
Yeah.
how beneficial? I mean, I'm assuming it's pretty beneficial having that story, and Kathleen is an antagonist for that.
Yeah. I think one of the things the show does well, and at this point in the show, you aren't fully in that pattern yet, but eventually you'll see that more and more outside of episode 8. You get a lot of these antagonists that are antagonists almost by circumstance, not really by the fact that they're evil people.
Right.
Like you can understand Kathleen's motivations, and although you could say there's not a lot of moral ground for her to stand on, it isn't like she is pure evil. And
Yeah.
now in episode 4, it's a little bit different, right? Because you don't really know why she's doing this. She just kills this doctor. She's like has all these people captive, and you're not so that it feels a little bit different. But then once you get the full backstory, that there's this whole civil war between these two groups of people, Fedra and well, this isn't the Fireflies. It's just their group of resistance fighters or whatever they are,
Right.
and they're both doing bad things probably.
Right.
So it's like, who's to say who was right and who's wrong and who should have been in charge and whatever. So to me, to have that to kind of focus the why in terms of like why do they care about getting Ellie and Joel and Henry, like why do they care about hunting these people down, Henry and Sam specifically, but also in Ellie and Joel because of Ellie killing some of their men, uh giving a face to that, and a face that you like kind of somewhat understand and
Uh-huh.
maybe could sympathize with. Like you don't root for her obviously because you've spent half or less, way less than half the time, like a third of the time with her than you have with Ellie and Joel, and
Right.
you're not meant to. But just having someone who you can understand and have a compelling antagonist is always going to be helpful, I think. So I did really enjoy that. And I didn't have a problem with her story. The only thing that I thought was a little too on the nose was like her death.
Yeah.
Just like the fact that she like hesitates, she has a gun and is like, oh, there's a, you know,
Her
infected.
whole yeah, I know
I'm gonna
exactly.
just
And
stand here and wait and let it jump at me. And I was like, okay.
yeah, well, and that's a like perfect segue to the best
Oh,
infected encounter in the whole
yeah.
show
Yeah.
is the hordes and hordes of infected that start. Okay, so they change and like a lot of things from the game here. First of
Mhm.
all, Joel did this in one try. Okay, took me several tries, right?
It's a huge change.
No, but I guess it wouldn't be that fun just like watching Joel just dying over and over again. No, but the sniper scene in the game is kind of boring looking back
Really?
on it
Okay.
because
It's frustrating. It's the worst part of the game by far.
you're
Oh,
trying to
wow.
just like dodge. You can't dodge the bullets. You have to like time it. And there's stupid enemies. You got to get from
Yeah.
point A to point B, and you can't shoot the freaking sniper guy.
Yeah,
You got to sneak up behind him.
if you take your rifle and you get in a safe spot and you scope into the building, there's not a person there.
It's just a flashlight.
It's just a gun that is spouting voice lines at you
Oh
because
my
they
gosh.
want you to
So
sneak up behind him to play the cutscene.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so you can't. There's no easy way of doing it.
Yeah.
But and after that, you do the cutscene with the guy, you kill him, and then some infected spawn in, and you got to protect them as they're running to the house.
Okay.
But it's a slow encounter for the most part. It's kind of junk, just how everything's laid out. It's like really convenient, but not like a good video game convenient of like good thing this door closed in time. It's more like a okay, whatever. But it's a good thing with we have uh the sniper scene, whatever. He kills the guy. And I love how first of all, it takes place at night because in the game it takes place in like daylight. And when the lady Kathleen comes,
Mhm.
I don't know what was going to happen at this point because this isn't in the game, which
Yeah.
another, we've been repeating ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen. And when the hordes of infected come out, it is like the most insane thing ever because they
It
are
was
just
so cool.
so many. And we get the first look at a bloater, which
Mhm.
is
Big
one of
boys.
the big boys. And I find this interesting. They had a practical suit, but decided to go CG, which I think is a good thing because I feel like if they had just a regular sized guy in a bloater suit, it would not be
It
nearly
wouldn't
as
have the same
intimidating.
effect. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
the suit was probably there for like, an
Close
idea
up
of
shots, maybe if they wanted
maybe or
to
just an
go in that
idea like
direction. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Uh,
I get that, but it was sick.
about that scene, this scene actually has like 50 billion references to the game. And by that I mean primarily two. So the guy played by Tommy's voice actor, he gets ripped in half by the bloater, which is actually the death animation if you get killed by a bloater in the game. Pretty cool. And the big thing is, being a video game, there are collectibles in The Last of Us, and obviously you're not going to have that in the TV show. You're not just going to have Joel walking around picking up pieces of paper and reading them, but that's the way for the game to world build. And the best little bit of world building in the game, which is that sewer daycare center. That's a whole level in the game, and you get to kind of, if you pick up all the collectibles and actually take time to read them, you learn about this group of people who wanted to kind of make a livable place just for their group, because do what you can to survive. And they had this whole system set up. It was really cool. And then something slips through the cracks and people start getting infected. And the Easter egg to that is the clicker that is attacking Ellie, and I think it's the one that eventually ends up killing Kathleen, is a child.
Yeah.
And that is actually a different fate that the children in the daycare received than in the game. And it's actually debatable which one's sadder, because in the game, what they had is you walk into a room and you see a guy with a skeleton with a gun, and then you see a tarp, and under the tarp are a bunch of children bodies,
Yeah.
and he shot all of them, and it's just rough.
Yeah.
And so I don't know
feel like
which
with current
version is
events, they
sadder.
probably went with
Absolutely, yeah,
the
absolutely.
zombie thing,
Yeah.
which is a wise choice.
And it's also just difficult to tell that story that's told completely through notes in the first game in
Yeah.
here.
Well, they kind of
but-
referenced that with the note that I think either Sam or Ellie find the note that was like a drawing from a kid of
Yeah,
the
and
person that's like their
that
protector.
drawing is in the game.
It's like in the game, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a cool a little note. And we talked about the action scene, but like we talked way earlier that there was not as much action as you might expect, but the action in episode 2 with the clickers in the museum and the action in this scene are both pretty incredible. So
Mhm.
like if you are a fan of action, you get good action. You just
delivers,
don't get as
yeah,
much
for
as what you
sure.
might want to get in a normal horror zombie type show. But when it has action, it is incredible.
Yeah.
This is one of the few moments where it's a million times better in the show than it is in the video game. Like that whole sequence,
Right.
at least to me. I'm sure that's obviously a
I
debatable
mean,
thing.
it's the sniper sequence. A lot of things would have been a million times better.
No. But yeah, and then of course it ends with, we already covered it, but Henry and Sam,
Mhm.
and they bury the bodies, and with his
The
notepad.
note.
Oh
Brutal.
man, it's like another, like, that's not even a sucker punch. That's like they're just, I don't know what they did. Some other analogy.
Yeah.
It's a fatality.
Yeah.
And then but yeah, episode 6.
So episode 6.
Yeah, episode 6. In this episode, we get to see Joel and Ellie talking a little bit. Shocker. About I think she mentioned, or she asks, like, about how the infection spread, or cordyceps or whatever, and Joel mentions flour, which is interesting because in the first episode, Joel forgot to pick up the birthday cake, which would have flour in it, and Sarah was about to take a bite of the cookies, but was interrupted by something, which they were freshly baked with flour in it, which would also explain why the grandma, turned infected or whatever. Which is like a little, like, they don't do a good job, I would say, at explaining the infection in this, or in the game. If they do, it's through like notes and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think they need to, though, honestly.
No,
It's just nice little fun stuff. Well,
but it goes back
but...
it goes back into, like, I just really enjoy, like, the world building and explanation of everything happening. But yeah, but what else happens in episode 6, guys?
This is when they meet up with Tommy in Jackson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, by the way, the guy they got to play Tommy sounds exactly like he does in the game.
Exactly.
It
like
is
him.
Wild. It's not the same guy, but it sounds just like him.
He's Diego Luna's brother, right?
I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is. I actually
don't know who Diego Luna is.
I know Gabriel Luna more than I know.
Oh,
okay. I didn't know any of them.
You don't know either. Okay, so Diego Luna.
Oh, I know this guy.
Is Cassian Andor.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Andor.
You haven't seen Rogue One either, though.
Oh, yeah, I have. That's who it is.
Number one.
Yeah.
We're gonna stop recording. You're gonna go watch Andor, and then we'll finish recording when we get back. Because Andor is the best Star Wars thing since 1980, maybe. I don't know. Anyways,
I think Last Jedi came out pretty.
Whoa.
Last Jedi is amazing. Andor is
Solo, the Star Wars movie, came out.
Yeah, it's okay.
Well,
anyways,
how many in your party?
Now.
Oh, no one, just me.
Change the title to Star Wars. Something like that.
So yeah.
So sorry. Yes, it's his brother, but he's also excellent. A great actor, the guy that is playing Tommy. And I love getting to see him again. Before we get into the Tommy stuff, though, I loved the opening with the old couple it reminded me, this might be a deep cut reference, but it reminded me so much of Hunt for the Wilder People, the Taika Waititi movie.
Ooh,
It reminded me so much of some of the people in that movie. Like
yeah.
these really like these people that it just felt like some people you just went and found in Alaska. Like, you're gonna
Right.
find some,
They're
they're
just
not
so
actors,
like
they're just people.
relaxed.
They're not even
there.
really
They didn't
actors.
even tell them
Have
they
you
were making
seen
a
that
show.
movie, Cameron?
I have
Oh,
not
it's really
actually.
good. It's really
Unfortunately, the
good.
only Taika Waititi movies I've seen are the Thor movies.
Yeah.
Jojo
Wait, not even
Rabbit.
Jojo Rabbit?
I've seen
Okay,
Jojo
okay,
Rabbit.
okay.
There we go. Okay.
So they just felt like normal people, and they were like kind of funny, but also just felt authentic and real. And so
Yeah.
it was a cool little opening where you get to see just people living their lives and cracking some jokes, and that was fun. And then you get to see all the Tommy stuff, which is
and that
also
entire
really
sequence,
good.
by the way, with the old people is not in the game at all. That was
Oh,
entirely
cool.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Even with like a gun pointed at their face, they're just like,
Yeah, totally chill.
Hey.
Like whatever. Like at this point, if you die, you're like, I'm old. I made it past an apocalypse. Like, okay, go ahead.
They probably didn't even know what was going on. They were just
Yeah.
like
He had a
living their
gun?
regular life.
But yeah, how did you guys feel about the whole Jackson Tommy situation thing going on?
Oh man.
Not like situation, just like the episode.
I was blown away by the fact that there was like a full like community. So I didn't know what was gonna happen from this point from not having played the games. So to have like a fully fleshed out, totally independent community with a smart way to protect it in terms of like spreading these stories of how brutal they are and how they're gonna kill everybody if you come near them and all that stuff. To have like a movie theater playing a movie, even though it was some random like movie. I don't know why kids would want to watch that movie, but okay. Desperate times come for desperate measures, I guess. But it was a really fun thing to just see like normal life again for a little bit. They got showers, they got new clothes, they got just like basic necessities and not necessities, I guess, but comforts that you would call necessities in our day, but to them would not be necessities because it's a whole different world. But to kind of get them to relax a little bit, it almost made me more freaked out at times. Like we meet a new character, and I'm like, okay, are they gonna try to kill Joel?
Right.
Are they gonna try to kill Ellie? Like, is this girl like And it made me not want to trust people because of the fact that that's how it had been for so many episodes. So when you meet Tommy's wife, I don't remember her first name right now. Maria,
yeah.
Maria. When you meet her, I'm like, she's bad. Like I'm just convinced, not because she's actually doing anything bad, but just because like
most people
that's
are
been the
bad.
show so far.
Yeah.
So I was like, she has to be bad. She has to be bad, and she's not. She's great, but it was funny just to see like how the show had already through 5 episodes had already affected me so much that I just couldn't trust a normal person.
I will say my mom had an opposite reaction where she was like, whenever there was a new character to hop up on the screen, she was like, oh, so when are they gonna die? Or because we've gotten Bill and Frank's death, we've got
Tess,
what I mean. So it's like she's
Sam and Henry, Tess,
exactly
everybody.
And I read an article where they're saying that this is repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, technically, if you want to be like, go into the definition of repetition, then yes. But it like I think this is completely fine. This is like a good version of repetition, because it goes well with the story, not just like.
Well, and Tommy and Maria don't die, so like if Tommy and Maria had died, then yeah, definitely. And also
it's not like Phineas and Ferb, where it's like the same exact plot.
Tune in next week for the same plot.
Don't you dare say anything.
I love
bad
Phineas
about
and Ferb.
All right.
But no,
I think that like those deaths before this, they serve a purpose, and as long as the purpose is kind of somewhat different, I can deal with it.
I have no issue with it. But
because the thing is, if you show too many new people and you show too many of them survive and just be okay, it takes the threat away from the world.
Exactly.
So it's a weird, delicate tightrope walk you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
No one is safe, and not even Joel. I mean, at the end of this episode, but
yeah.
But
I forgot this is the same episode where
but
where
we get to see the beautiful Jackson, and I'm an idiot. I will mention the second game, but won't go into detail.
Okay.
So I in the second game you start because at the end of the show they go back to Jackson, or they're going to Jackson. I had zero clue because in the second game you start off in Jackson. You know what I mean? It kind of picks up a few years later. And I after watching the show, I'm like, oh, this is where they were. I was a complete idiot. I was so dumb, and it took me to like a year after I played the game to watch the show and realize, okay, no, it's the same place. But Jackson looks great. It does a good job at giving you like a nice Western zombie feel. And it's like, I don't know, like you mentioned, it's a great like neat community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super ironic for being in like this apocalyptic end of the world scenario, and they've got a movie theater and they've got a bar and they've got restaurants and all that stuff. It's interesting. But yeah, I really like the set of Jackson and its setting.
This episode features my favorite part from the game, which is when Ellie runs away for a little bit because she hears that Joel's trying to hand her off.
Yeah.
The little argument they have about like how Ellie's trying so hard to hold on to him and he's trying so hard to get rid of her, because both of them are feeling the same sense of connection. They're just reacting in different ways. That scene in the game is my favorite part, and it's really good in this show too. But it's a point that I think is a good time to bring up, that I've played the game not just once, not just twice, probably around 10 times.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was gonna say like 3, 4.
No,
Okay,
no.
okay.
I've played it a lot, and I've also watched other people play it a lot. So I'm pretty familiar with it, you could say. And
Mhm.
I'm so familiar with it to the point where the cadence of speech and like the inflection and how people say their words in the cutscenes I have memorized. so when Pedro Pascal obviously says a sentence differently than Troy Baker does, I'm like, it's like sticking out in my brain. It's like, that sounds different. Why does it sound different? It's like, but even with that, this scene still delivers the weekly gut punch that I signed up for. And man, it's just such a powerful scene.
Mhm. I did love the scene, and when I like watched, they like reference how this is a big part of the game in the post credits of the episode. But to me, the scene that I actually gravitated to a little bit more, part of it was because it was one of the few scenes we've had so far that really lets Pedro Pascal kind of really act and give him a moment to really just him talking to Tommy. And it's the scene where he's telling Tommy, like practically begging Tommy to take Ellie, and he says something along the lines of like, "I fail her every day." And the line, in the context of the full conversation, you can think, is he talking about Ellie or is he talking about
Yeah.
Sarah still?
Right.
And he talks about how has dreams every night and he can't, like, he wakes up and can't remember it. He just has this feeling that he's failed her again.
Yeah.
And just that pronoun without the proper noun in there, like, it's
Mhm.
heavy because it's like he's guy's still clearly not over his daughter's death. And we'll get into that more in the finale, but like he's clearly not over her death yet. And this new girl is kind of bringing up some of that same emotion, obviously, and to the point where he's having dreams. But he also does care about her now to the point where he is afraid of repeating that failure. And that's just like heavy stuff. As a person that has a 14-month-old kid, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I thought your kid was like 6 months.
No.
Well, my bad.
14
My
months.
bad.
I mean, in the grand scheme of life, that's not that big of a difference. So,
I mean, if you round down.
yeah.
That also brings me to another difference from the game. When Tommy and Joel are talking about who should move forward with Ellie and stuff, in the game, it's more of a confrontation. It's more of like
Mhm.
an aggressive situation, which I don't think works better or worse. It just works differently. In this, we see Joel break down, and he's
Mhm.
very emotional, and that's like a side of Joel that is always, when you're playing the game, you can tell that's underneath him all the time, but he really never lets that out. And it's
Right.
interesting to see this character in this kind of vulnerable state of like of just like it breaking down in tears because of what he's going through. And I
Mhm.
thought that was another great change that um the different medium caused them to take in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this is the best Pedro Pascal performance that we get like so far in the show.
Yeah, thus far. Yeah.
And like you can, I don't even have a kid. I got a dog. You know what I mean?
Hey,
But you feel
yeah.
his pain, and you can see how messed up this guy is. You know,
Mhm.
he like and they mention it where they did terrible things before this, before where they are now. And it's like you can see the wear and tear on him without him having to even open up his mouth. And when he does start telling these stories, you can just like hear the heartbreak, and it's like super devastating. And it's like, man, it's you feel for him. And the thing is, he's someone we really honestly shouldn't feel bad for, because he's
a horrible person.
Terrible
if you
person.
think about it, like he could be a villain in another person's like if
sure he is a villain,
right?
That Fedra agent, you know what I mean, that he just destroyed in the first episode. But we still love Joel. We love Joel. But I would not be surprised if this does win awards, especially for his performance.
Definitely,
I think it's well
for
deserved.
sure.
But yeah, and then so yeah, they have their little talk. And then they have another talk with Ellie, and then Joel sleeps on it and is like, you know what? I'll give her the option. We'll see if she wants to go with Tommy or if she wants to go with me. And he doesn't even have to finish the sentence. And,
I love that moment.
It's like,
what was super cool about it, because I didn't think about it actually until just now, it connects super well to the finale of giving Ellie the choice, right? So like, and the lack thereof in the finale, but that is like a sticking point with him, that he's like, no, she needs to have some control over her own life. And in this episode specifically, it feels more like an excuse, like he doesn't want to let her go. And so he's like, well, I thought I'd give you the chance to choose. So it's hard to say whether he's just like saying that to like save face and not be like, I was wrong, I'm coming. But also you could read it as like one more time of, because you get it again in the finale of him basically feeling like she needs to have a choice in the matter, and being upset when someone doesn't give her a choice.
And
even though he does the same thing.
He does give her a choice, technically.
I mean,
not in this
episode, but I mean, that's true, I guess.
Moving on to
episode what he did.
7. From this point on, I have a lot more complaints. I will say, which I don't think is going to be a popular opinion. But they start making changes from the games that I think make the show worse. But I don't want to dog on the show, because it's still great. There are shows that get a lot worse from a better place, so this isn't no Squid Game, where the last episodes of that are just unwatchable almost. But before I start talking about the things I don't like, I'd like to hear from people who I assume liked it more than I did.
I mean, before we leave episode 6, with the last thing, Joel getting stabbed at the end of episode.
Oh yeah, we did.
I forgot about that.
that came out of like, because again, my point of view is that this is the Joel and Ellie show. So like, I just assumed like I would never have seen that coming. And not only did I not see it coming, but it was like he killed the guy. So like he's good, and then he's like very not good. Like, oh, what the heck just happened? How'd that happen? And then him falling off the horse, I was like, okay, well, what's gonna happen now? So actually having that like kind of hang in the balance for a while, and I didn't believe that he was going to die here, but I wasn't like 100%. I was like 99% sure. And that 1% was driving me crazy. So it was, I actually kind of didn't mind them kind of giving us an episode to see Ellie kind of fight for Joel's life. And I think I know I've heard, I don't know from experience, but I've heard this episode 7 mostly is DLC, right? So what I like about pairing it here, though, is that like you get to see a story where Ellie had to let someone go, and now she's faced with a choice of letting Joel go or not, and she chooses not to because she's reflecting on what happened and how she wished she wouldn't have had to have let Riley go, but she did. And so like that pairing thematically works well enough for me that I don't mind taking a little bit of a detour. I can see why people wouldn't love it, because it's like the whole episode is a detour. It's like 40 minutes of a detour. So I could get why someone wouldn't love that. But for me, I didn't mind it. But again, I had the same thoughts that I had in episode 3, where I was like, for now, I don't have a problem with it, but I might if I feel like I'm like if I feel like by the end of the season I've been shortchanged on Joel Ellie time. which I didn't by the end, but I had that fear still a little bit, even though I did enjoy the episode.
Right. My problems with it aren't actually that it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is DLC, but like I love the DLC, like and it fits here, so there's no reason to move it anywhere else.
Right.
But I by and large really like this episode. My problem with this episode is actually very minor. But as far as just episode 7 goes, I think it's important because the context that I never played the game before the DLC came out, so I always had that context with it. And I think that context is very important to Ellie's character. And so I'm glad it's here, and it fits in so well. It's just snug right in the middle, and it gives time for people like people like you and people like other people who probably haven't played the game for that 1% to bug them.
Yeah.
Because you can't resolve that right away, because then it's kind of like, oh, so why was I worried all for the whole week if they're just gonna be, oh, he's okay,
Don't worry about it, he's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it took him pretty much two episodes to really, because even by the end of episode 8, he's not like 100%,
Right.
Right. But the time span of episode 7 is like 10 seconds, technically.
Sure, yeah, that's fair.
She goes upstairs, so
yeah, she gets some like, what does she end up getting, like some
no,
tape or something, or like
she's
sewing
sewing
kit.
him up.
Yeah, like a sewing kit. She sews him up. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe 2 minutes.
Maybe. I can stitch up pretty quickly. So I don't know. Episode 7, my complaints are different. Mine is pacing. I think, yes, we need Ellie's backstory. And yes, this is a perfect time to do it because Joel is injured. But for some reason, I find the story not as engaging with Riley and Ellie than I did with Bill and Frank. I found Bill and Frank's plot and their arc to be much more entertaining than Ellie and Riley's, and I don't know why. I really don't. I don't think Riley gives the best performance for Storm Reed. Now I'm not dogging on a child actor by any means. I'm just saying that, like, Bill and Frank's.
She's 20. She's 19.
Well, screw her then. No,
she's fair game. You can be mean.
No, because we watched her in Missing. She was in a movie not too long ago.
Yeah, Missing.
And she was fine in that. So I found that she did, like, I think it was a good casting job as far as, like, I think she, like, fit as, like, how the character looks, but I think the performance was not just that good, and I felt like it was kind of hard to get into it as well, and I don't feel like their chemistry was as good as Bill and Frank's. So I guess that was my issue, and so I say pacing, but it probably was just with story, because
I did think the pacing was a little slow in the start, so like I think it took too long to get to the mall. However, and I guess I really only mean that in the segment from after the opening with Ellie in the Fedra compound and her conversation with the officer and the bully. So like from that moment, that was all fine to me. It was from then to up until the mall was maybe a little too drawn out. But I actually really liked Riley, and I really liked their relationship. And in terms of like their connection, I just felt like the mall was where it really shone the brightest. And so the stuff before that was like, you took like 15 minutes to get to the mall, and it could have taken like 3, maybe 4 or 5, So, but other than that, I enjoyed all of that. I'm glad they didn't need to show us Riley turning and Ellie killing her, because you can say that story.
They don't even show it in the game.
They don't.
Oh, okay.
Either. That's another thing of it cutting away before disaster.
So my complaints come from having played the game, because correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm the only one in this here that has actually played the DLC.
Yeah, I watched the cutscene of it.
Yeah,
or cutscenes.
So in the DLC is obviously, since it's a video game, it's not a full video game, but it's like it's longer than the episode is. So they cut out stuff that they shouldn't have, and I think I know this is okay, I don't know what's going on with my brain. Okay, so so far, my opinions of as an adaptation, it is just as good as or better than in the instance of the sniper scene than the game. This is the first part where I can definitively be like, this is worse than the game. And that is because they cut out in the mall, they go to a lot more places in the game. There's a scene where they find like what's essentially a magic 8 ball, and they're asking questions about that, and the questions they ask inform their character, obviously. And then there's like other forms of like mini competitions they have throughout it that just like kind of strengthens their relationship a little bit. And the biggest thing that is, I think, so stupid, because it's not that they took it out, they left it in, but they changed it into just a worse change. You know how they play Mortal Kombat?
Mm.
They do that in the game, but in the game the machine doesn't work, so they're just using their
Yeah.
imagination. And I think
Yeah.
that is a lot more interesting and better as way of showing how they're able to find little glimpses of light in the apocalypse, and just an instance of their friendship, that they're able to use their imagination together in that way. But
Yeah.
in this, they're just like, oh, look at that, they're playing a video game. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just little things like that, and then big things like taking out important chunks, I think dampens the relationship a little bit too much, to where for someone who might not have played it, it probably works pretty well. For someone who has, I understand there's a better version of this out there, and that kind of takes it away a bit for me.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast that has been covering the show, and it's two guys that have played the games, and so they talk about the comparisons, and then they spend like a segment spoiling stuff. So I just avoid that segment. But they both didn't like this episode as much as I did, and it seems like you're agreeing with that pretty much. And so it seems like that idea that
Right.
maybe having played it and seen something different that you liked better is like impacted that,
Yeah.
which is fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how that works.
Mhm.
Have any of you seen Lost?
Yeah.
It's only like my second favorite show. So
Okay.
I
I
went to
view this
Hawaii because of Lost.
serious.
Yeah.
Dude, I want to get like a Dharma Initiative tattoo or something. I think that'd be sick. But
Yeah.
also
Dharma.
I'm scared of needles. So I think this episode is like you Cameron, you have seen it, right?
Yeah, dude. It was one of the first TV shows I actually watched,
Right.
like other than SpongeBob or something, you know.
I view this as I think it was in like season 4 or 5. I can't remember, where they introduced this couple like into the show, and they said like they were on the plane the whole, like they just added
Yep.
these two characters, and they said they were
Yeah.
on the plane, and they die in the end of the episode.
Yeah. They're
I
in
view
one
this
episode.
I view this as that episode. Like it's not as bad as that Lost episode, where that episode was just a waste, and they
Mhm.
needed to fill like the
Just
18
pure
episodes that they
filler.
needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I felt like this gave me glimpses of it, I will say.
Yeah.
But
For
I'm
me, what having not seen and I have not played the DLC, do you think like having played the DLC, it removed some of the tension? Because I thought like this is gonna go to crap any moment, and I was constantly like looking for infected and looking for like something bad to happen the entire time. Whereas I'm assuming you knew that it wasn't gonna go bad until the very, very end.
Well, I mean, well, first of all, in the DLC, it's kind of broken up a little bit more, because
Okay.
in the game, Ellie goes to a different mall. She goes to a more rundown mall to
Yeah.
find a first aid kit.
Yeah.
And
For
so
Joel,
for Joel,
right?
because you're kind
Yeah.
of going back and forth in time. And so there's not like, it's not just straight through the mall sequence. There is a little bit of combat because it's still a video game.
Yeah.
And that kind of sends like a general sense of tension as just a player, but you use the mall sequence as like a refresher, as like a break, because it is peaceful. But in the back of your mind, you know, because you've played the game first, you know this does not end well, you
Yeah.
know. And so there is tension there. And I forget what question you asked, honestly.
Oh, just basically like because to me, like the whole time, like obviously I know Riley's gonna die somehow.
Oh, right.
So like the whole time I'm watching where she's taking them to this mall that looks like it's getting ready to fall apart at any moment, I'm constantly thinking like something's gonna pop out and take them, or
Yeah.
attack
It
them, or
it
Fedor's gonna
it's
show up, or something's gonna
it's
happen like the whole time.
it's a weird conflict within yourself, because you're having so much fun and it is a piece away from the action, but you also know that it cannot stay this way.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't seem as a lack of tension. It's just like a interesting kind of dramatic irony kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Mm.
But you know, after after episode 7 ends, what happens next? Episode 8. And we're
Yeah.
here to talk about that. Episode 8 picks up right after the stitches are finished.
Mhm.
And we see Ellie hunting this deer. And it's a big deer and she kills it. She gets a good shot. I will say there's no bow and arrow in the show. She uses a bow and arrow in the game, and I struggled trying to kill this stupid deer with a bow and arrow. But we did it anyways. But then she kills the deer, and these two guys walking through the wilderness end up finding this deer, and we come to find out that their names are David and James. And we get a scene of David in the beginning, and they're in like a church service almost. And David, what were your thoughts on watching this psycho like
So yeah,
unfold in front of you?
having no spoilers for this episode specifically. So again, I had some big picture spoilers, but I didn't have anything specific.
Yeah.
So I thought like, okay, this makes sense. Like the people are gravitating to anything that could help give them any hope. So gravitating towards religion in an apocalypse makes perfect sense to me. And then I thought like, okay, maybe I just sincerely was like, maybe he's just a nice guy, because he was like several times had the opportunity to like try to shoot her or kill her or take advantage of her in some way, and he made sure that James did not do that. So there's several moments where I'm like, okay, he's fine, he's fine. And then when James comes back with the medicine, and James could have killed her, he like stops him again. So I'm like, okay, maybe he's actually the one good guy in this whole world. I was definitely wrong, but he does that, and then that's when he drops the line of like basically
Yeah.
the connection of like, oh, I just had a funeral for a guy that was killed by a crazy man that was with a little girl.
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah.
oh, so you make the connection of like these people are connected to the people that attacked Joel and Ellie at the university that Joel killed all of them, or not all of them, but I think most of them. And one of them was the one that stabbed Joel. So there's just definitely like some tension here, but he still gives her the medicine and lets her leave. So I'm still kind of like, okay, something's gonna go wrong here. He's not totally obviously like a good guy, but he could have done some bad stuff several times. And then I get like proven wrong time and time again as it goes along. And it's like the waves of like, oh, he's a cannibal, but maybe he's just like doing it out of desperation. And then he's like, oh, he's also trying to groom her. And then, oh,
Yeah.
he's also a rapist. Like, it's like it just gets
Yeah.
worse and worse and worse every time. Every
He's
like 5 minutes, it's like, oh, thought I couldn't top that, huh?
This is probably my favorite episode. It's like this or episode 4 that are my favorites, or 5, sorry.
Yeah, 5. I
And
was like 4.
Love episode 4.
I love that. I love that build episode.
I love the
Pure
setup so much.
setup.
The payoff's too
Yeah.
anxiety driven for me. But no, it's this or episode 5 that are my favorites, and I think David is played so well.
Oh, man,
That
he is
like
harrowing.
this actor does such a good job at making you so scared, like,
Yeah.
and just feeling super uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Like you said, when he drops that like one line about knowing them, because I've
Everything
only
happens
played
for
the
a
game
reason.
once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
played this
it's so
game
creepy.
once, and so I knew David, but I forgot pretty much all of it. I didn't
Oh.
know that. I forgot they were cannibals. I forgot, exactly what he says. So this was kind of like because I remember pretty much everything leading up to this, and watching this was like I forgot what the game was like, and it was so good. I was like, because it wasn't like as it was going, I was remembering. I was like, oh, this. I was like being told for the first time.
Mhm.
And I was like on board, and he lets her go just for the simple fact that they can follow her and find out where Joel is like
Yeah.
so nuts.
And I love that she's smart enough to know that, right? She's not just like, okay, well, yeah, we're good. She's like, no, I need to prepare. Like, I need to give Joel a
Right.
weapon. I need to try to wake him up. I need to get out of here. I need to try
Yeah.
to like cover the door. Like, she makes moves
Mhm.
to protect him and get him ready, and then get out of there.
Right.
And then even like to the point where she's distracting them to try to like pull them away, which she probably could have just like thrown a rock or something, but she's like, hey, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Please come get me.
But no, it is. We get so much here, so much,
So
and
much, yeah.
one of the shortest episodes too. I think it's like 40 something minutes. Is that right?
It's 50, but it's 50
Oh.
even, so it's the third shortest, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is like, your action fans are gonna love this. You know what I mean? It's
Ooh.
like from the very beginning to the end, you get so much, and you got like Ellie Trent, like you said, waking up Joel. We get to see when Ellie goes missing, Joel go on his tear, and I think if it wasn't clear before, it's very clear now that like you don't want to mess with her. Like, he is very protective of her.
Yeah.
He basically sees her as his daughter at this
And
point.
he's capable of doing awful things to you.
The whole kneecap thing is like so disgusting, and you're watching this guy, and the fact that he is like, they tell the truth, and he's like, I don't care, still kills him anyways.
Right.
The line right
nuts.
after that, when he's like, I'm not gonna tell you anything, and Joel's like, it's okay, I believe him, and he kills him anyways. I'm like, oh my god.
But
he's
we
brutal.
get like one of the best. Sorry, Cameron, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna say, I feel like kind of a party pooper because I like the episode, but this is another example of, I think the game does this better for a very particular reason, but I don't want to kill the vibe. So what were you saying, Ben?
Yeah, don't kill the vibe. But we get to see, so Ellie gets taken and is put in this prison cell, and David's kind of weird, whatever.
As David's do,
Yeah. She
Classic
bites his
David
finger.
move.
When I first saw her bite the finger,
Ooh.
I always thought to myself, does that infect him? Does it? I don't know. I was like interested to see how that plays off.
She tries to use that, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure she's wrong. Like,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
We
It's still
learned
in
in
her
the
brain.
second game what happens if that
okay.
happens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a cool tease.
Yeah.
I like that.
I forgot.
Okay.
Well, it sounds a lot cooler than it is.
Okay. Well,
okay. I'm sorry.
Get me all hyped up for nothing.
But no, that'd be sick. But we're seeing
literally sick.
Yeah.
right. So yeah, David's doing what Davids do. Not all Davids, but
Hope not. Goodness.
creepy Davids.
Yeah.
And yeah, she bites the finger, and he's ticked at this point. So he gets Troy Baker, and they're getting ready to chop her up and feed her. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. The scene where they feed everybody in the dining hall.
Oh man!
I didn't know they were cannibals at that point.
Yeah, and you're just hearing them all. The sound design is so good in this because you're just hearing the spoons scrape against the bowl.
And like,
did you notice he had a bigger plate than everyone else?
Yeah,
it was like very meaty too.
The little girl,
and he knew,
whose dad they were eating was in there with them.
Yeah. It's like it's like one of those things where in a movie or in a show, sometimes things later on will help recontextualize and recolor what you've already seen. But doing it in the same episode was so effective because you immediately think back when the daughter was like, "When can we bury him?" And he's like, "Oh, well, we can't really do it right now. Ground's really hard. I don't know. Maybe in a couple of months." So it's like, yeah, right. Man. It's like there's so many things.
Let's digest
like, oh
this for a second, okay?
It is like there's so many moments that you instantly think of when you realize that they're cannibals in the same episode, where you're just like, okay, that makes me think of this differently and this differently and this part. And when he like just dumps all the meat into the stew, it's like, it's so
and
gross.
Even then, I never caught on that they were cannibals until Ellie said it.
Yeah,
because
I've
they
heard
got
people
the
that
deer.
noticed it. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they got a deer, and he says it's
and
venison.
They mentioned it was venison, exactly.
But,
so I was like,
her
okay, good enough
her
for me.
reaction, his line delivery even kind of gives it away if you rewatch it. His line delivery is like,
"It's venison.
It's venison." Like, well, do you really want to know? It's venison. And she's like, looks at him like, okay, sure, dumps it in. Like, there's it makes me wonder how many people know, because they both act like they kind of knew.
But I feel like less people know than you would want.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But
that's disgusting. And then yeah, whatever. And then Ellie puts the cleaver to the guy's neck, and that has to hurt, I'm sure.
It's a flesh wound.
Yeah, it is, but
merely a scratch.
Then sets fire to the cabin on accident. I will say it was on accident, not intentional. But
maybe.
Gets the job done either way.
this sequence, I will say,
Oh,
was a lot more fun in the game. Because you have to
well, it's
hit
not
him
fun at
like
all in the show.
no. Well, in the boss fight, you gotta hit him like 3 times and then he dies. It's like a Lego Star Wars thing where you gotta like hit down his hearts a
It's the
little
rule
bit.
of threes, in video
Yeah.
games.
But uh but also within the game, you're kind of shifting perspectives of
Okay.
Joel and Ellie because the fog and everything and the like snow storm is so bad that you can't see anything. And it's so cinematic when you see this burning. It's super massive and it's like crazy cool. I'll say the show does capture that feeling though, of just chaoticness going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we get Joel. No, sorry, not Joel. Ellie and David are fighting again, and David is like being his creepy self and is saying his lines that no one likes.
The shades
And
felt inappropriate for the subject matter, so I took them
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
It's a heavy. It's probably the like heaviest episode.
Yeah.
By
Oh yeah. And then Ellie lets loose.
Yeah,
She
it's brutal.
goes ham, and
that
it
shot's
is
recreated like by the like bar for bar from the game, which I don't think there's a better way to frame that scene, honestly.
yeah, it's so good. And I'm so glad they don't show the aftermath. I
Yep.
bet your visual
Yeah.
effects and practical effects workers are like, yeah, don't show that. Please don't. We don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after talking about how awesome the episode is, let me talk about how I don't like it. Okay, I do like the episode. I think it works well enough in a similar way that the previous episode works well enough. But, and as I was watching it, I was actually really enjoying it. It was after when I was thinking about it a little bit more. I was like, well, in the game, all the people Joel meets are a lot are like different versions of what Joel could be. They're like one step away. If Joel makes one decision, he kind of turns into someone else. If he's a little bit more protective of Ellie, he becomes Henry. If he turns Ellie away, he becomes Bill. In this show, if he accepts Ellie, he becomes Bill. It's kind of showing Joel a bunch of different ways to be. And this, I think, making him an evil cult leader, and like openly rapist, because those themes are still there. They're just a lot more subtle in the game.
I had to ask Cameron. I was like, was he a pedo in the
He
game?
he was a pedo in the game, but it was insinuated. It wasn't like that.
The only thing we get was of him like
the hand
touching her hand
thing in the bars in the jail cell.
He full on is like actively trying to rape her while the building is going down.
Right.
Like,
and he's
while the
like
building's burning down around him.
You don't know that the fighting is the part like
the part I like them. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't have any of that in the game. They don't have any of that in the game. But like having David be, it's weird to say this, just a cannibal. In the game.
A cannibal with some pedo vibes.
It makes you think, yeah, we don't like cannibalism, but like in a survival situation, would you feel the need to do that? What does Joel necessarily have morally over David that we don't like him because he's fighting our protagonists? But a lot of the times, like if you step back and look at the grand scheme, Joel's not a good person either, and he's one of the worst people out there. And so by making David so much eviler than he is in the game, I think you kind of take away a little bit of that moral gray, and you make it a more black and white. Yeah, David not being alive is a net good for society and the world, But
I will say though, like, I love how evil David is. I think because the game has always lacked the clear evil antagonist that's not infected,
and that's why I like it. That's the thing. I think this is a matter of taste. Okay. This is a matter of taste. I think if you want a villain, then you're going to find a great villain with David. But I personally, and I don't want to say too much, but that's part of the reason I don't like some of the second game. I like the moral gray, the no right or wrong kind of feel you get from the first game.
I do appreciate that same feeling in everything else. So I kind of like having a little something different this time. So generally speaking, if this is like a movie, I probably would prefer to have more the morally gray stuff. But because you get a little bit of that in other situations with Kathleen and in other places, um, to have one of them be purely evil, I think is fine.
Yeah.
And what I do actually like about it the most isn't even that, it's the way that it impacts Ellie and the way that it pushes forward into the finale.
Yeah.
So it makes that moment
Right,
of reunion with Joel and Ellie much stronger to know that she just barely survived with her life, being eaten, being raped, like all kinds of terrible things that could have just happened
Yeah.
to her. So they're embraced in that moment and that comfort that he gives her and that fatherly comfort and protection that he, I do love that she saves herself from David, but at the end of the day, she does come back, and that reunion
Right.
is I think is strengthened by having a really evil person, and then her dealing with the trauma in episode 9. I won't go too far because we want to stay here for now, but her dealing with the trauma in the next episode, it makes it more impactful knowing like, yeah, she's going to be dealing with this probably for months, maybe even years.
right, right.
So like it makes it more sense with why they're so distant and weird acting and why that
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
very different and he's trying to do it to try to make up for it in that beginning of episode 9. So it brings forth other good things to me, so I'm more okay with it. And also it's kind of a little bit of a different take for what
Right.
I've been used to. But I definitely get why
Yeah.
you might
And
prefer the video game version over this, especially if you have dealt with anything traumatic. You probably want me to watch this episode.
yeah, it is
Yeah.
rough.
Well, in the game, Joel actually pulls Ellie off of David
To
while
stop
she's
stop
going
her from
ham.
like finishing it. Like I mean, he's dead already, but you mean like
Yeah.
she kills him and just keeps going.
Yeah.
Well, because at some moment she's like kind of
Yeah.
lost it at this point, which you
Yeah.
can't blame her. You
No,
know what I mean?
no.
She's
Yeah.
like, this is traumatic, and she's
Yeah.
probably super angry.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
just, whew,
I will say
I
a
don't know.
detail I'm so glad, which I don't think this is the kind of detail you can forget to put in. It's very intentional, but it's something that still needs to be brought up. In the last episode, Joel accepts Ellie back after trying to take her out of his hands or whatever. But in this episode, he really fully accepts the role of basically a surrogate father. And where in episode 1, Joel's nickname for his daughter is Baby Girl.
Mhm.
And this is the first time we hear Joel refer to Ellie as Baby Girl, which is when that he's like, consoling her after, the
David's
horrors.
death. Yeah.
So that's a nice little detail.
Yeah.
But
That's a great moment.
that was a good segue into episode 9.
Mhm.
Which take it away, somebody.
I mean, Ben, you mentioned that your favorites were 5 and 8. My favorites are 5 and 8 and 9. I thought that this episode did the morally gray thing like pitch perfectly.
Is it even morally gray though? That's the question.
I think it is. I think it is. I think it is.
Well, we'll talk about that
As a
when
parent,
we get to it.
I think
okay,
it is.
no,
I think
all right,
true.
No, you are
that's
absolutely
you
right.
have.
But
over
I think
us.
that even beyond that, like we're getting way to the end of the episode, but they're so vague and ambiguous on what they're gonna do and if it will work or not, and they're not even like doing like tests on her to make sure. They're just like, no, this is gonna work. And is this doctor even like? I mean, this is the apocalypse. Millions of people have died. Is this guy even like a real like does he know what he's doing?
Right.
Like, there's so many things for me to think like she could die, and still we won't have a cure.
Yeah.
So like I get
It's really up in the air.
the basic argument of like humanity or Ellie is like, okay, yeah, you kind of have to go with humanity, I guess, but there's a lot of context to the cure side of things that makes me doubt that it would even potentially even work, especially if you're Joel. So I can see why somebody would land on either side of the argument, especially if you look at it through that parent lens. And the episode, I think, does an incredible job of getting you there. As I was talking about with them being kind of disconnected and him Joel working to get her back. The scene, I think, is my favorite scene in the entire show. If you count like the scene of the giraffe and then the scene right after where Joel and her are talking and Joel talks about the guy that shot at him and missed. That like I was like full crying when he's like when she says, "Oh, really?"
Yeah.
That's incredible. That was like the writing was incredible when he says to her, when she says to him, she says, "Oh yeah, like the lesson is time heals all wounds," and he's like, "It wasn't time that did that."
That
I
was
was like,
so great.
"Okay, now I'm crying."
Yeah, man.
Ugh.
Um, that man, it's so great. I had a conversation a while ago before the show was even announced,
Okay, wow.
where I was talking about um the strengths and weaknesses of each medium and why it's important to, when you want to create when you want to do something creative, to consider the different mediums in which you can tell your story and how different mediums have different strengths. I was
Mhm.
talking about this with somebody, and I brought up The Last of Us as an example of how some things cannot be adapted into certain things. And I this is where I felt the most, where the adaptation away from a video game, taking the interactivity out of it, does weaken the story in a pretty substantial way. I think this might be my least favorite episode.
Oof.
Whoa.
Wow.
But that, again, a 9 out of 10 ain't bad. But if everything else is 10s and 11s,
Yeah.
like and that's because, first of all, I think the beginning is a little repetitive, where the scenes that you just said, by the way, I have no problem with that. 100% great.
Yeah.
But the thing where we're seeing Ellie feel the trauma from this event with David, that is illustrated way better in the game, in my opinion, because as you're walking through the game, there are opportunities for you to have conversations with Ellie, and those become more distant. But the way it really drives the point home is, in the game, in order for them to hide loading screens, there are instances where you'll boost Ellie up and she'll do something while the game loads, and then she'll help you
Yeah.
up. In this point of the game, you do the standard, press triangle to boost Ellie up, and then when you press it, she doesn't come over to you. And that is like, all right, this opens my eyes to something is definitely wrong, because this thing I've been doing without thinking the whole game is now not happening. It really draws attention to it. And I think they tried their best with this show, but it doesn't hit the same as it does with the game, which that's always been my only complaint with this, is some scenes just don't hit the same. And then the whole hospital shootout thing, I think it goes by too quickly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It takes
So
up quite a bit of time.
I
It could
was
just because we were bad at it, but like I do like the irony of the melodical music playing while he is shooting up these people.
Mhm.
But and the reason I say like he did a bad thing, I think
Mhm.
it is undisputed that he does a very bad thing here, but you can justify it for the simple fact that like you have a kid, obviously. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like the stupid like what would you do if you were in the situation? I think
Yeah.
anyone in this situation would do this
Yeah.
if they could do it. Obviously, I don't know. But I mean, I think the fact that the show for majority of the kills shows them shooting back at him,
Mhm.
and we're like, that's okay because he's doing this. But when people are putting their gun down and they're raising their hands and he's
Yeah.
still, it's like, okay, Joel, you
Yeah.
could, because he could have walked away from these people and just gotten Nelly. And when he goes into the hospital room, they changed one kill in this, which was he in the game he kills the surgeon with a knife.
Okay.
with the scalpel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the scalpel. He shanks them. And then
Yeah.
in the game it gives you options to kill the other surgeons in the room, which I did. Because I was going at it. I was yelling. I think I enjoy the scalpel kill a bit more because I think it's more personal too. I think it's like more rough, and I honestly wish they show he killed the other surgeons too,
Yeah.
because I wish he didn't leave anyone alive for the simple fact that they attempted to do this
Yeah.
to Ellie, his daughter, and that's what they get.
See,
But you know,
to me, the impersonality, him looking at it so purely from a logic point of view, overall, like horrified, makes it more horrifying,
Yeah.
right? Because you're
right,
like, this guy to this point, we keep hearing that he can do bad things, but he's been doing bad things, killing people that are also trying to do bad things back to them. So you're not ever really like questioning him, or you're never really like, oh, Joel shouldn't have done that. In this moment, you're full on like, I'm not sure I can be on his side anymore. And then probably plenty of people who watched this and thought like, he's 100% wrong, and there are people that maybe were like, I think he's wrong, but I get why he would do it. So there's people that are probably all over the spectrum on like this issue in terms of like how this is ending, which is why I think it's an incredible ending. And I
Yeah.
know I know that's off the game as well, but like the how bold it is to make you question this protagonist who you've been with the whole time, pretty much. I thought it was really like gutsy, and I really did appreciate it. And he mentioned the time. It is the shortest episode, so I could see needing a little bit more time to sit with it. But at the same time, some of that shock factor comes in just how quickly he's just like,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm here now. I'm gonna kill all these people, and we're gonna get out of here. I mean, just the line to that first doctor when he's just um, he's like, I'm gonna let you take her, and he's just like, not even a hesitation. I'm gonna kill you right
Bang.
here.
Right.
No questions, no conversation. This is not about my humanity or your humanity. This is about one thing: is that I'm gonna get her, and I'm gonna leave, and you're not gonna stop me.
Yeah.
To the point where that like you can even tell he almost his line delivery when he's talking to Marlene even is very different when he goes to Marlene and actually finishes killing her in that flashback. He says like, you just come following after her again. Like he's just like very matter of fact, he's not emotional, he's not worked up, he's not he's just like, this is the truth of it. You would come to try to get her again, so I have to kill you. And
Yeah.
that coldness is something we haven't seen in him in a long time, especially once
Yeah.
the ice is melted in the first couple episodes, and their connection has brought something different out of him. This is like this is the Joel from episode 1, from like the Joel that's putting dead bodies of kids into the fire in Boston. Like this is like
Mhm.
the dead face, like, and it's very jarring to jump back to that Joel, and I loved that because it's
Right.
very like
It's back
shocking.
to that Joel, but that Joel did what he did for his own survival.
Yeah,
Him returning back to his roots, but for somebody
somebody
else
else. Yeah,
is, yeah.
That's his
great.
world, though. That's who he has. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
What
And it's
wonderful
And
terminology, Ben, because I was going to bring up obviously being in love with the game, I would watch a ton of reviews and analyses and just people like varied opinions. And so I don't remember who did it. So I wish I could give credit, but I can't. But there's always been this debate of, well, what if the cure didn't work? What if that, and I think it's more powerful if we either assume A, it doesn't matter, or B, it does work. We assume it does work, because then that makes it to where Joel does not care about the fate of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you say it's impersonal, and I agree. I think there's a level of impersonal to the specific people who are there, but
Yeah.
I think, especially you could say this for the show too, but I think you could get this impression a lot more if you're doing it yourself in the game, where there is a level of personal to it. It is personal, but not like to the people, but in the sense where the world took everything away from Joel. So now he's going to take everything away from the world. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't want the world to get cured, you know? Like I don't think Joel's thinking that deep in the moment. And I
Yeah.
think that's
No.
part of it. But just this I say all that to say, one, there's a level of personal to it, and two, I think the debate of whether or not the vaccine works doesn't matter to a certain
no,
degree.
I totally. I've always assumed it would matter, and how I've looked at it is that he has the choice of saving the world or saving his world,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
his world and all he cares about is Ellie at this
Yeah.
moment. You know,
And I
so
mean that scene of them talking about the guy that tried to shoot at him, right, is sets it up perfectly to where you're like, oh, he's gonna choose her. Like there's no
mhm,
question in what he's gonna
Yeah.
do, because they
yeah,
just kind of discussed that basically, where he opens up to her and really talks about his life and the fact he tried to take his life after Sarah's death. So it's pretty clear cut. Like he's gonna just do this. This is what's gonna happen next, and that's why he's so quickly. You can even tell the moment that Marlene says, I don't have a choice," and he's like, well, "I do."
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, they're all gonna die.
right. Now, I will say you can do yourself a favor and look up the alternate ending to this. Have you? I wonder if you've seen
I didn't
this,
know that it
but
existed.
Not to the
well,
show. It
To
doesn't
to the to
technically
the to the
exist.
game.
so Neil Druckmann pranked Troy Baker
Oh, okay.
by having Marlene sing her lines and in this final cutscene, and it is amazing because
Marlene is a Broadway actress.
Because
okay.
And he tells Troy, no matter what happens, even if you mess up, just finish the scene. He's like, okay, and Troy Baker just sings right back to her, and it is
hilarious.
amazing. It is so good. It's so funny to watch.
There was I saw a making of documentary. I think there was a moment where they were gonna put it in the game, like as a if you beat it on ultra hard mode or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't do it, so they put it in the documentary. But I've seen that scene too. And anyone who's played the game, or anyone who's interested after watching the show needs to look that up because it's
so funny.
It's hilarious.
And I feel like musicals. It's Last of Us is basically a musical.
I'd love a Last of Us Broadway play.
It's Hamilton and then The Last of Us for me.
Man. So the ending, that is something that I think is going to be pretty divisive.
Yeah.
Because it with things like this where characters build a relationship through a thing, you expect it to end like, hey, they're cool now. It's his daughter now, and they're on the same page, and they get to live happily ever after. But that doesn't happen in this necessarily. I remember Ben called me after finishing the episode, and he's like, "Do you think Ellie knows?" And I think she does.
There's definitely a chance she does. I think that, like, my first reading of it was like, if she does know, she's just deciding to like not even worry about that right now and just be like, it doesn't matter. But that could come back up later. She's not like, she's a kid still, so she can change her mind. She could grow in a few years and be like, you know what, that does bother me. I don't know, whatever. But I think you can read it either way, which is pretty cool. That's why I like the ending, because it cuts it off before you get too much of a reaction from either one of them after she does ask him, like, is this all true? Like, this is what happened. Like, what you said it happened. He says, I swear. And she says, okay. And then it's over, like, really quickly. So you don't really fully get to see their responses, which I think is really smart, because then you can do what you want next season.
Yeah, leaves it open-ended.
And I watched this with my parents who hadn't played the game. And so they would ask questions and stuff, and I'm able to like pretend I hadn't seen it. So I would because I remember how I felt when I was watching it, so I could like engage in conversation with them as someone who hadn't seen the ending. And I'm going to do this here when I had only played the first game. I think that it is Ellie figures that Joel's not telling the truth, but she wants so badly for him to be telling the truth. And honestly, I think this could be the ending. I don't think we need a season 2.
Well, we're getting 2 of them, so
3 seasons. Actually,
we're getting 3 seasons.
You guys haven't seen this. They're doing the second game in 2 seasons. You guys didn't see this. Okay, this is fact. HBO has
that works so because the
game is
but that makes me so worried though, Cameron. That makes me so worried.
Okay, we can't talk about it. We can't talk about it.
We can't talk about it right now.
Okay, listen. This is what I've been saying.
The second game will be 2 seasons.
Listen, this is what I've been saying. I'm not a huge fan of the second game. Okay, I think it would be better if it didn't exist. Every day it grows on me a little bit, but I still don't like it overall. I think that the show has an opportunity to take what went wrong in the sequel and form it into something better. That scares me. What you just said scares me. I think it's necessary.
Because the biggest reason... Okay. Oh, don't.
We can't spoil it. I will say with absolutely no spoilers that there is something that I know about that's in the second game that I think making that second game 2 seasons will help those moments breathe a little bit, because there's just more space and more time. And so I'm excited for it being as someone that really only knows the very end of the second game and one of the early game moments. I'm excited for it to be spaced out a little bit more, to give it more room to breathe. That could backfire, absolutely. But yeah, season 2 and 3 is going to be game 2. And I think then the positive thing is that if it also gives them time to finish the third game, so then you get a season 4 or 5, and then they end it there. So
Man,
That's the
When
thing.
did you?
That's what's happening.
When did you find this out?
Yesterday.
that's
I can send
wild.
you. I can send you guys the link to the article. But yeah,
I mean, to
yesterday.
be fair,
I just assumed that you guys would have known that. I'm sorry.
I didn't really exist yesterday. I was still
No,
recovering
I
from
was
the
so
Oscar
tired.
party.
And there
Yeah.
you go. Nice.
I will say they did say they're not recasting Bella Ramsey, which is
I don't
probably
think they should.
wise.
Yeah.
It's probably wise. And David made me very worried in saying that.
So
But
sorry.
also, Cameron, imagine we just did not find that out until the end of season 2.
I would cry, but not in the way they want me to. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't think I'm
restore
gonna
your
cry in season 2 anyways.
Here's the deal.
restore your faith in humanity. They used a real giraffe.
oh, they did.
Okay,
I was
I
wondering
don't.
about
I don't
that.
think so.
It's a
I
real
don't think so. Yeah, I saw the picture of the real giraffe, but
Oh, okay.
I think it's similar
Do you
with
think
the
maybe
physical.
parts of it are real, parts of it are
I
not?
think well
Maybe.
because
But there is a real
I-
giraffe there at least. They had a real giraffe on set.
At some
yeah.
point.
Hey,
Yeah.
I will.
that's all I need.
Because either the background's probably CGI, but what I think is that they had the real giraffe there to use as like a reference to a CGI
But
giraffe.
you don't bring that on set though.
Here's
Yeah, I
the
don't
thing
think
though,
you
it
can
just
on set.
looked. Did it not look weird? It biting the stuff
You
out
mean
of Ellie's hand.
you mean in the episode?
I think
Yeah.
when they're petting it, it might be
shots looked a
real.
little bit. Yeah.
There was some eyeline stuff that seemed a bit off, but
I don't know. Maybe they used a CGI giraffe for some things.
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe, but,
But it wasn't
definitely one
enough
on
to
set.
take out of the episode. I was just,
No,
you know.
I just wanted to make you happy again, and Ben, you just be happy.
yeah. Man,
Yeah, whatever.
that's
Well, guys,
I just
I
broke the
think
podcast. I'm sorry. I'm so
so
sorry.
no, it's
you
fine.
never be invited back on.
In a more general, overall way.
Yeah.
I think my last impressions for this are this. It's a great thing for people who don't have a way or an interest in playing the game. So if you don't have a PlayStation or if you're just not a video game person, this is a great way to like experience this story. But if you do have a way to play the game, I would strongly urge people to do that first. Because I think it overall does things better. And yeah, I could have some like blindness, nostalgia blind. I don't know if it's nostalgia, but like, I could be
It's
blind.
a decade now.
But yeah, but I mean, if I played it when it first came out, I would play it when I was 10. I don't think my mom likes that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
David would have been 30.
Yeah.
Hey, and not quite. 27.
You're 27?
No. I'm going with the joke.
Yeah.
Oh.
10 years ago,
okay.
I was 23. So
yeah.
I did not know
33
you were in
years
your
old.
30s.
Yeah.
I thought you were old 20s.
No, I appreciate that though.
Yeah, you look great for your age.
Yeah.
No, well, go ahead. What are your final thoughts, David?
I mean, kind of like what I was saying at the beginning. I just think that like it's a really like a breath of fresh air for the genre, just in general. If you like these actors at all, like it's just a good show. Like it's just well acted, well made. I mean, I think the context of the game can change things for the better or for the worse, and that's fine. Overall, I think I've yet to hear anybody on social media. I'm sure there's someone exists somewhere, but I've yet to see anyone that I knew that I trusted their opinion on like movies and shows and stuff that was play the game and was like, yeah, I just ruined it. I hate this show. So there are moments that I'm sure don't quite stack up, and that's totally great. But yeah, I think it's excellent, and I'm excited to get more. I'm obviously nervous because I know the fan reception to the second game wasn't as great, even though I have
all over the place.
it's all over the place. I've a couple of reviewers that I do tend to agree with liked it, but also people that I also agree with didn't like it. So, I'm trying to keep an open mind because I've loved this first season.
That's the best way to go about it.
And if it's downhill from here, then like you just kind of micromanage that and be like, this first season was so great. That's
That's
great.
what I do with the games, man.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
and I'm used to that with certain other things that I have to just be like, you know what, that's fine. I'll just keep that over there. I mean, Star Wars is the same way. Any franchise that once you expand it, you just risk like certain things are not going to be as good. And so, I think it's worth the risk because, like you said, the opportunity to fix some of those things or rectify some of those things, or just change them could be incredible. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that I think the game is bad. I haven't played it, so I don't have any idea. I just know a couple of spoilers and not the overall story
Yeah.
even really that well. So I'm gonna be excited for it. But overall, I mean, I really enjoyed this season, and I would highly recommend it for really anybody, unless you were
Yeah.
just like an absolute no go on anything horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty much perfect show. Definitely one of my favorites. I can't like rank my shows right now. I need some thought process behind it. Like it's no Breaking Bad. You know what I mean?
No, but
also
it's
it
very
doesn't have
good.
the gratification of like having 5 seasons. You know what
I
I
Right.
mean?
also think Breaking Bad is like the best show ever made. So it's kind of hard to be like,
Exactly.
it's not Breaking Bad. Well, nothing is. So
Yeah, it's not Succession.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
no, no, this is fantastic. I am scared.
Yeah, me too.
But also I was scared when they announced the show. And
Yep.
if history repeats itself, it will be a great thing.
Yep.
But I think that's gonna be it here.
I actually have a couple more things.
Sure.
Oh,
Like
my
very minor,
bad,
very minor,
idiot.
very minor. One, you
My
guys
bad.
brought up Breaking Bad, which reminded me. I watched the show with my parents. I'm currently watching Breaking Bad with my mom. My dad didn't like it, which was the exact opposite reaction I expected. But
Yeah.
anyway, I had the same feeling of knowing what's going to happen, and I feel bad because like I know these characters they're going to get attached to, and bad things are going to happen, and like, oh man, I don't want to get into Breaking Bad spoilers, but my mom said something today that I was just like, but
Yeah, like, oh,
What
no.
was it?
Yeah.
What was it? What was it?
I'll bleep this out on the episode. Have you seen everything, David?
I've seen everything. Yeah,
Okay.
you're fine.
My mom says, like,
And the way
uh,
too.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well.
But back on topic, I had something else, but I forgot. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
David, you have a fancy microphone.
I mean, it's not.
You've got
the
a fancy
microphone.
voice. You must be on somewhere. Where can we find you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a podcast. I was talking to you guys a little bit beforehand. It's pretty casual. It's pretty low key. I've done 68 episodes so far, but it's been almost 2 full years of doing it. It's actually I was thinking about it today, knowing that's going to be on this episode with you guys. It I think kind of works like hand in hand. I think you guys do a lot more like current shows, current movies, things that are happening right now, and I'm just like,
Talk about whatever you
or
want. Yeah.
what about like Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
But no,
like
that's great.
what about this old movie that no one likes anymore? Like,
Yeah.
so like I do a lot of pop culture stuff. I do a lot of movie stuff, but not only movie stuff. I do a lot of wild, wacky, zany episodes. So the podcast is called That Shady Buffalo podcast. You can find it really anywhere that podcasts are around. There's a few YouTube episodes, and mostly it's not on YouTube. To give you an example of like a wild, wacky thing, I put all of my most of my podcast guests into a Hunger Games simulation, and they all killed one another, and it was hilarious. Someone fell on someone from a tree and killed them. I mean, just wild, absolutely wild. So then we do that, and then we talk about movies too. So it's like it's all over the place, but it's a lot of fun. It's really just like whatever fun conversation I want to have with some friends and family and whoever.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fun. Besides that, I also create and host Survivor games with people. It's been played last year, and those episodes are coming out as well. You can look up Survivor Indianapolis on YouTube. I would suggest looking up Survivor Indianapolis Season 3, because in my experience, when you Google or YouTube Survivor Indianapolis, you find survivors of the USS Indianapolis, which is a very, very different
We have
thing
to
than
do
what I
something
do.
similar.
Yeah,
We always
they're
tell
not
people
they're not as cool as
No,
we always tell people
I'm not going to go there.
to look up what did you think the whale, because that's how
That's
we
the one that
don't show up unless you click that, unless you click that.
So your Survivor episodes are very good, though. I just watched the third one, and it's a lot of fun. I'm a bit
It's a lot of
biased because
fun.
I'm in it,
You were in
but
it, yeah.
I'm
It's a
gonna
lot
have
of
to
fun.
check those out.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Where can I
you have
find
to tell
them?
me? You have
In
to
the
tell me what
description
did
of this
you
video?
think? Yeah.
Yeah. But
Oh,
yeah, all of his things will be in the description of
Thank you.
this here episode.
Yeah.
Right.
I appreciate you guys
So
having me.
check
It's
them
been a lot
out.
of fun.
This was
Well,
great. This is probably one of our
it was
best
our
and
honor.
longest episodes.
Yeah.
And longest.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's a
let's
9-episode show. What are you gonna do?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's do our outro.
Okay, bye.
We don't have an outro.
I was waiting
We're
for you
just-
to do
yeah.
something fun. I was like, oh, cool outro.
We're
I
just
didn't
gonna
know
cut
that.
it out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I was
it.
like,